She stood there in that blood-red dress, diamonds cold against her throat, watching her husband laugh with men who'd kill for less than what he paid for his cufflinks. Elara Vance, once known as Nix, the driver who made grown men weep on asphalt, had become exactly what Dominic Rourke wanted. Beautiful, quiet, empty. Then she heard him. My wife, a lifeless ornament, decorative, nothing more. The champagne glass didn't break in her hand, though her knuckles went white. That night, she'd steal his favorite Koenigsegg and disappear into smoke. But before we get there, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The Rourke estate didn't sleep. It pulsed with a different kind of energy after midnight. Darker, hungrier, wrapped in expensive cologne and old blood. Elara had learned this in the 3 years since she'd traded her racing leathers for silk and lies. She stood on the marble balcony overlooking the main hall, watching 200 criminals pretend to be civilized. The annual gala, Dominic's favorite theater. You look stunning tonight, Mrs. Rourke. She didn't turn. Victor Kozlov's voice carried the texture of gravel and cigarettes. He'd approached from her left, deliberate, testing if she'd flinch. Thank you, Mr. Kozlov. Her voice came out smooth, practiced, empty, the way Dominic preferred it. 3 years married, and I've never heard you say more than 5 words at once. Victor leaned against the balcony railing too close. Makes a man curious what you sound like when you actually speak. Elara's fingers tightened on her clutch. Inside, lipstick, a compact mirror, and a switchblade she'd never had to use. Some women prefer listening, and some prefer staying alive. Victor smiled, all teeth and threat. Smart choice in this house. He walked away before she could respond. Not that she would have. 3 years of this. Sharks circling, testing, waiting for her to bleed so they could tell Dominic she was weak. She'd learned to be stone. Below, Dominic held court near the centerpiece fountain. 6'2", built like violence in a Tom Ford suit, dark hair swept back from a face that photographs loved and enemies feared. He laughed at something Marcus Chen said, the sound carrying up to where she stood. Genuine. He never laughed like that with her. Mrs. Rourke. Another voice. She'd lost count of how many men had approached her tonight. This one belonged to James Whitmore, Dominic's attorney and closest advisor. Your husband requests your presence. Of course he did. She was part of the decor, after all, something to display when the lighting was right. Elara descended the curved staircase, each step measured, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown. Eyes tracked her movement, some appreciative, others calculating. She'd learned to read the difference. The appreciative ones were easier. They wanted something simple. The calculating ones wanted leverage. Dominic saw her approaching and extended his hand without looking, already knowing she'd be there. His fingers closed around hers, warm and possessive. Gentlemen, my wife. Elara, I believe you've met Marcus and Raphael. She had, twice. They wouldn't remember. She smiled anyway, the expression trained and hollow. Dominic's been holding out on us, Rafael Torres said, gold rings catching the chandelier light. 3 years, and we barely know the woman who tamed the Rourke beast. Nothing to tame, Elara replied. I'm simply the woman lucky enough to stand beside him. The words tasted like ash, but they played well. Raphael laughed. Marcus raised his glass. Dominic's thumb stroked the back of her hand once. Approval for the performance. If you'll excuse us, Dominic said smoothly, I need to introduce Elara to the Volkov delegation. He guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, his hand at the small of her back. To anyone watching, they looked perfect. The power couple. The king and his beautiful, silent queen. They didn't speak as they moved. They rarely did at these events. Elara had learned early that Dominic preferred her decorative, not participatory. She could stand beside him, smile at the right moments, and disappear into the background when business turned serious. The Volkov delegation stood near the East Wing entrance. 4 men in dark suits, expressions carved from Siberian winter. Dominic's hand pressed slightly harder against her back. Warning or reassurance, she couldn't tell anymore. Alexei. Dominic's voice shifted, taking on an edge she recognized. Negotiation mode. Thank you for making the trip. Dominic Rourke. The tallest man stepped forward, gray eyes sweeping over Elara like she was furniture.
And this is the wife I've heard nothing about. Elara doesn't enjoy the spotlight, Dominic said, the lie so smooth she almost believed it herself. She prefers privacy. How convenient. Alexei smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Private wives hear many things, see many things, remember many things. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Dominic's fingers tightened against her back. My wife, Dominic said quietly, knows exactly how much to remember and how much to forget. Elara kept her face blank, her breathing even. This was the dance. This was survival. She'd learned it the hard way. The night she'd asked Dominic about the blood on his shirt collar, and he'd looked at her with such cold disappointment that she'd felt it in her bones. Don't ask questions. Don't show curiosity. Don't be anything but beautiful and silent. I need the powder room, she said softly. The perfect excuse. If you'll excuse me. Dominic released her without comment. She could feel his attention already shifting back to Alexei, to business, to things that mattered. She didn't. The crowd swallowed her as she moved toward the west corridor. She knew this house like a circuit track, every turn, every straightaway, every place to hide when the engines got too loud. She'd mapped it during those first terrible months, when she'd realized what she'd actually married into, and it was already too late to run. The powder room sat empty, all gold fixtures and 2 bright lights. Elara stared at her reflection. The woman looking back wore a dress that cost more than her first car, jewelry that could fund a racing team for a season, makeup applied by professionals who'd left 3 hours ago. She barely recognized herself. Once she'd been Nyx. The name still gave her a physical reaction, chest tight, palms sweating, heart racing like she was hitting 200 on a midnight straightaway. Nyx, who'd made grown men question their skills. Nyx, who'd walked away from 3 sponsorship deals because they wanted to control her racing style. Nyx, who'd sworn she'd never let anyone cage her. And then Dominic Rourke had walked into that garage in South Downtown, looking for a custom rebuild on a '67 Shelby, and she'd been stupid enough to think his interest was only in the cars. The courtship had been fast, intense, overwhelming. He'd made her feel seen, valued, alive. The warning signs were there, the security detail that appeared after their 3rd date, the way certain people went quiet when he entered a room, the fact that he paid for a $250,000 rebuild in cash without blinking. But she'd been 24 and reckless and tired of proving herself on tracks where promoters called her honey and assumed her skill was luck. Dominic had looked at her like she was extraordinary, like she mattered, like he actually gave a damn about the woman under the racing suit. The proposal came 6 weeks later. The wedding 3 months after that. The cage closed so gradually she didn't notice until the lock clicked shut. Elara gripped the marble counter, knuckles white. When had she stopped fighting? When had she accepted this half-life of charity luncheons and silent dinners and playing dress-up for men who wouldn't remember her name? Voices filtered through the door, male, low, familiar. Tell me Dominic actually trusts that woman. Trust? Marcus, please. She's decoration, a trophy, something pretty to show investors he has a personal life. Elara went very still. She seems harmless enough. That was Marcus Chen's voice, cautious as always. Harmless? The other voice laughed, and Elara's stomach dropped as she recognized it. Dominic. My wife is a lifeless ornament, Marcus. Decorative. Nothing more. I needed someone who wouldn't ask questions, and she's perfected the art of being seen and not heard. Bit harsh, don't you think? Honest. Footsteps moved past the door, fading. She serves her purpose. That's all that matters in this business. The silence after they left felt like drowning. Elara stared at her reflection, watching something fundamental shift behind her eyes. 3 years. 3 years of making herself smaller, quieter, less, all because she'd thought, what? That he'd loved her? That she'd mattered beyond the image she projected? A lifeless ornament. The words echoed in the space between her ribs where something vital used to live. The part of her that had felt wind against her face at terminal velocity, that had trusted her instincts over fear, that had been wholly, completely, ferociously alive. She'd killed that part of herself for a man who saw her as furniture. Her hands stopped shaking. In the mirror, she watched her expression change, the careful blankness sliding away to reveal something sharp and cold and furious. Elara left the powder room with the same measured steps,
the same pleasant mask. She drifted back to the main hall, accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, positioned herself near the fountain where she could observe without being observed. Dominic stood with the Volkov delegation now, deep in conversation. His face showed none of the contempt she'd heard in his voice. He was all charm, all business, all control. She sipped champagne and planned. The garage sat in the estate's north wing, temperature-controlled and meticulously organized. Dominic kept his collection there, 23 cars, each one rare, expensive, and barely driven. He preferred admiring them to using them, which had always struck her as obscene, but one car in particular would hurt him. The Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute, pearl white with carbon fiber accents, capable of over 300 miles per hour. He'd paid $4 million for it 8 months ago, had it shipped from Sweden, and visited it exactly twice a week like it was a mistress. He'd never let her touch it, never even let her sit in the driver's seat. Perfect. The gala would run until 3 a.m. minimum. Dominic would drink exactly 3 whiskeys, enough to seem social, not enough to impair him. He'd make deals, consolidate power, and maybe, if the mood struck him, remember he had a wife standing somewhere in the periphery. Alara finished her champagne and set the glass down with careful precision. She'd learned patience in this house. Tonight, she'd use it. 2 hours crawled past like wounded animals. She played her role flawlessly, the dutiful wife, the perfect accessory, the lifeless ornament. When Victor Kozlov approached again, she smiled. When Rafael Torres made a comment about her dress, she thanked him. When Dominic finally remembered her existence and introduced her to a Japanese delegation, she bowed at exactly the right depth. And the entire time, behind her eyes, she was calculating. The Jesko's keys lived in Dominic's study, 3rd drawer down in the mahogany desk, tucked inside a leather case he thought was clever. The garage code was her birthday, the one piece of sentimentality he'd allowed himself, though she suspected it had more to do with easy recall than actual sentiment. At midnight, she excused herself again. No one noticed. No one ever did. The study sat dark and undisturbed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the eastern grounds. Alara didn't turn on the lights. She'd learned to navigate this space in the dark months ago, during the nights when Dominic worked until dawn, and she'd wandered the house like a ghost in silk pajamas. The desk drawer opened silently. She'd oiled the rails herself last month during a bout of insomnia and spite. The leather case sat exactly where she knew it would be, the Koenigsegg logo embossed in silver. Her fingers closed around the key fob, and something in her chest unlocked. She didn't rush. Rushing meant mistakes, and mistakes meant consequences she wasn't ready to face yet. Instead, she moved through the house with the same measured calm she'd perfected, just another shadow in expensive fabric. The garage smelled like leather and oil and money. Motion sensors triggered soft lighting as she entered, illuminating rows of automotive perfection. The Jesko sat in the center position, elevated on a platform like an altar to excess. Alara approached it slowly, trailing her fingers along the door panel. The carbon fiber felt cool and perfect under her touch. She'd missed this, the visceral connection to something built for pure, unapologetic speed. The door opened with a soft click, and she slid into the driver's seat like coming home. The interior wrapped around her, carbon fiber, Alcantara, every surface designed for function and speed. Her hands found the steering wheel, fingers curving into position automatically, muscle memory kicking in after 3 years of forced hibernation. She pressed the start button. The twin-turbo V8 roared to life, 1,600 horsepower waking up and stretching. The sound hit her like a physical force, vibrating through her bones, reminding her of everything she'd been before she'd made herself small. Alara didn't think. Thinking meant doubt, and doubt meant staying. She put the car in gear and drove. The garage door rolled open smoothly, revealing the circular driveway and the long stretch of private road beyond. Security would see her leaving on the cameras, but they wouldn't stop her. Mrs. Rourke was allowed to go wherever she wanted, as long as she came back. She wouldn't be coming back. The gates opened automatically, sensors reading the Jesko's signature. Then she was through, onto the main road, and the city sprawled ahead like possibility made of light. Alara drove carefully at first, keeping to speed limits, signaling lane changes, every movement controlled. She needed distance before someone noticed, before Dominic pulled himself away from his deals and realized his favorite toy was missing. 10 miles out, she opened it up. The acceleration hit like a religious experience. 0 to 160 in 6 seconds, the world blurring into streaks of color and light. The engine screamed, transmission shifting seamlessly, every mechanical component working in perfect synchronization. She'd forgotten this. The pure, undiluted rush of speed, the way time compressed and expanded simultaneously, the feeling of being completely, entirely present in a single moment. Her hands knew what to do without conscious thought. The Jesco responded like an extension of her nervous system, reading her intentions through the steering wheel. She took an on-ramp at 90, threading between two semis with millimeters to spare, and laughed. Actually laughed, the sound wild and unfamiliar in the climate-controlled cabin. The city fell away behind her. She drove east toward the warehouse district where the old life still pulsed under cover of darkness. 3 years was a long time, but some things didn't change. The underground circuit would still be running. They always were. She just had to find them. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Once, twice, 3 times. She didn't check it. She knew who was calling, knew what he'd say when she finally answered. The concern would be real but shallow, more about his property being missing than his wife. Let him worry. Let him wonder. Let him feel a fraction of the uncertainty she'd lived with for 3 years. Alara drove until the roads turned rough, until the streetlights flickered and died, until the city's polished facade gave way to the raw underbelly where people came to forget the rules. The warehouse district at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, if you knew where to look, you could find anything. She parked the Jesco 3 blocks from her actual destination, in an alley between 2 abandoned buildings. The neighborhood wasn't safe, but the car would be fine. Anyone trying to steal it would trigger the security system Dominic had installed, and she'd be long gone before they managed to disable it. The building she wanted sat squat and unremarkable, corrugated metal walls tagged with graffiti, windows blacked out. Bass vibrated through the foundation, low and steady. She could hear the crowd inside, the particular frequency of people gathered around something dangerous and illegal. Alara kicked off her heels, opened the Jesco's trunk, and found what she'd hoped for. Dominic kept a go-bag in every car, paranoia disguised as preparedness. Inside, cash, a burner phone, a Glock she wouldn't touch, and a pair of black sneakers that were 2 sizes too big but would work. She shoved her feet into the sneakers, stuffed the cash in her clutch, and left the diamonds on the passenger seat. She wouldn't need them where she was going. The entrance sat around back, down a flight of concrete stairs that smelled like piss and ambition. 2 guys stood guard, young, muscled, wearing expressions that said they'd seen enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be smart. "Private event," the taller one said, stepping into her path. Alara stopped 3 feet away, meeting his eyes directly. "I'm here to race." He looked her up and down, taking in the designer dress, the 2 big sneakers, the way she held herself. His partner laughed. "You lost, sweetheart? Charity ball's in the other part of town." "I'm exactly where I need to be." She pulled $500 bills from her clutch, fanned them out. "Entry fee, right? Or has inflation hit the underground?" The tall one's expression shifted, reassessing. He took the money, counted it twice, then jerked his head toward the door. "Your funeral." Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between a nightclub and a gladiatorial arena. The center had been cleared for the main event, whatever that was tonight, while the periphery hosted smaller games, card tables, people dealing everything from meth to stolen electronics. But the real action was happening in the back corner, where a crowd had gathered around something that made them roar and curse and throw money. Alara pushed through the bodies using elbows and determination. The crowd gave way reluctantly, annoyed until they saw her face, then just confused. She didn't belong here in her blood-red dress and borrowed sneakers, and everyone knew it. She didn't care. The center of the crowd revealed what she'd been hoping for: a street race organizing. 3 cars already lined up, drivers checking engines, crowds placing bets. The race wouldn't be here, too enclosed, but somewhere close. An industrial park, maybe, or one of the abandoned airport runways east of the city. A man stood on a platform made of stacked pallets, holding a megaphone and taking bets. Late 40s, scarred face, eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and learned to profit from it. He spotted Alara, and his expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and shock in rapid succession. "Well, hell!" He killed the megaphone, jumped down from the platform, and crossed the distance between them in 4 long strides. Nix? That really you, or am I having a stroke? She smiled, and it felt like the first real expression she'd made in 3 years. Hey, Dante. Hey, that's all I get? He grabbed her shoulders, searching her face. You dropped off the planet. No warning, no explanation. We thought you were dead. Close enough. Dante's grip tightened. Where the hell have you been? Somewhere else, living a different life. She glanced at the cars, the crowd, the barely controlled chaos. But I'm done with that now. Done with? He followed her gaze and understanding dawned. No, absolutely not. You can't just show up after 3 years in a fucking ball gown and expect to, I've got a car. That stopped him. Dante knew her well enough to read between the lines. What kind of car? Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute. He whistled low. Jesus Christ, how did you... No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. He studied her face, whatever he saw there making him soften slightly. You sure about this? Coming back isn't like flipping a switch, Nix. People have questions, expectations. Let them question. Let them expect. She met his eyes directly. I need to race, Dante. I need to remember what it feels like to be alive. He searched her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but not tonight. Tonight you watch. Get a feel for who's running the circuit now. Tomorrow night we set you up proper. Deal? It wasn't what she wanted, but it was smart. Dante had always been smart. Deal. Good. Now get off the floor before someone recognizes you and this whole place loses its mind. He led her to a catwalk running along the warehouse's upper level, a place where she could observe without being observed. The race organizing continued below, drivers arguing about routes and rules while crowds placed increasingly stupid bets. Elara watched, and with every rev of an engine, every argument about gear ratios, every moment of pure automotive chaos, she felt something fundamental shifting back into place. This was real. This mattered. Not charity galas and diamond necklaces and plain dress-up for men who saw her as decoration. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop. She finally pulled it out. 17 missed calls from Dominic. 9 texts, progressing from concern to angry to something that might have been actual worry. The latest read, "Where are you? I'm calling the police." She typed back, "Don't bother. I'm exactly where I need to be." Then she turned off the phone and dropped it in her clutch. Below, the first race was loading up. 3 cars, drivers she didn't recognize, heading out to whatever course Dante had arranged. The crowd followed, streaming toward a fleet of vehicles parked outside. You coming? Dante appeared at her elbow, keys in hand. Where? Airport Industrial Park, 2-mile circuit, 6 turns, no rules except don't die. He grinned. Thought you might want to see what you're up against tomorrow. Elara followed him down the stairs and into the night. His car was a modified Subaru WRX, all function and no flash, exactly the kind of machine she respected. She climbed in, and he drove. The route to the industrial park took them through the city's decaying edges, past factories that had closed decades ago, and strip malls that served as fronts for operations the police were paid to ignore. This was the world Dominic pretended didn't exist, the underbelly of his carefully constructed empire. She'd lived in both worlds now. Only one of them felt real. The industrial park spread across 40 acres of cracked asphalt and rusted equipment. Someone had marked out a course using traffic cones and burning barrels, 2 miles of technical driving that would separate skill from bravado. Cars were already lining up when they arrived, headlights cutting through the darkness. The crowd had grown, people emerging from shadows with money and attitude and hunger for something raw. Dante parked and killed the engine. Last chance to back out. Of tonight or tomorrow? Both. Elara watched the cars positioning themselves, drivers doing final checks, crowds pressing close but leaving the track clear. This was the religion she'd abandoned, the church of speed and danger and proving yourself against physics and fear. I'm not backing out. Didn't think so. Dante pulled 2 beers from the back seat, popped them both, handed her one. But I gotta ask, what happened, Nix? 3 years ago, you were the best driver on the circuit, turning down sponsors left and right because they wanted to own you. Then you just vanished. Some of us thought you finally took a sponsorship. Others thought you crashed somewhere and nobody found the body.
Now you show up looking like you walked out of a magazine, talking about being done with a different life. She sipped the beer. It tasted like college and bad decisions and freedom. I got married. Dante choked on his drink. You what? Married. To a man who wanted a wife who'd be seen and not heard. I thought... She stopped, the words too complicated for beer and parking lots. I thought it was what I wanted. Turned out I was wrong. So you stole his car and came back here? Something like that. He gonna come looking for you? Alara thought about Dominic, about the 17 missed calls, about the way he'd dismiss her as a lifeless ornament to his associates while expecting her to stand beside him and smile. Eventually, but not here. He doesn't know about this part of my life. You never told him you were Nick's? I never told him anything that mattered. Below, the race was starting. 3 cars lined up, engines screaming, crowds pressing close. Someone fired a flare gun and they launched. Alara stood and moved to the edge of the overlook, watching the cars tear through the course. The lead driver was good. Smooth line selection, minimal braking, reading the circuit 3 turns ahead. But the second-place driver was better, taking risks that paid off more often than they didn't, closing the gap with every turn. By the final straight, they were neck and neck, engines maxed out, both drivers refusing to lift. They crossed the finish line within a fender's width of each other, and the crowd erupted. That's your competition tomorrow, Dante said, joining her at the railing. The one in the red Nissan. That's Kira Volkov. Yes, related to those Volkovs. Alexei's niece, actually. Fast as hell, doesn't give a damn about dying. Probably the best driver currently running the circuit. And the other one? Marcus Webb. Ex-Formula 3, got banned for fighting with a steward, ended up here. Technical driver, everything by the book. But the book is written in his head, and nobody else gets to read it. Alara watched both drivers climb out of their cars, accepting congratulations and money from their respective backers. Kira Volkov moved like a fighter, all compact power and controlled aggression. Marcus Webb looked like an accountant who'd accidentally wandered into the wrong career. I can beat them, she said. Yeah, I know. That's what worries me. Why? Dante finished his beer and crushed the can. Because tomorrow night, when you line up in a $4 million hypercar and proceed to destroy every driver on this circuit, people are going to notice. And when people notice, they start asking questions. And when they ask questions about Nyx, about where she's been and what she's been doing, he turned to face her directly. You sure you're ready for that shitstorm? Was she? 24 hours ago, she'd been standing on a balcony, playing the role of perfect wife, her entire existence defined by a man who saw her as decorative. Now she was drinking cheap beer in an abandoned industrial park, planning to race a stolen car against drivers who'd built reputations in her absence. I'm ready. Okay then. Dante pulled out his phone, started typing. I'll get you on the roster for tomorrow. 9 p.m., same location. Bring your car, bring your nerve, and for the love of everything fast and stupid, don't die before I get to see this. They stayed until the last race finished, until the crowd dispersed into the darkness, until the burning barrels were extinguished and the circuit returned to being just another stretch of forgotten pavement. Then Dante drove her back to where she'd left the Jesco. The car sat untouched, security system armed, diamonds still glittering on the passenger seat. Alara retrieved her heels, left Dante's sneakers on the hood with a silent thank you, and climbed back into the driver's seat. The engine started with that same visceral roar, and she felt it echo in her chest where something vital had been dormant for too long. She couldn't go back to the estate. Wouldn't. But she also needed somewhere to sleep, and cheap motels would ask questions about a woman in a ball gown driving a multi-million-dollar hypercar. Her phone powered back onto 23 missed calls and 14 new texts. She ignored all of them except one, a message from an unknown number reading, "Come home. We need to talk." D. She typed back, "I am home. Finally." Then she drove to the only place that made sense, the old garage in South Downtown where she'd first met Dominic, where she'd built engines and rebuilt transmissions, and been Nyx before she'd tried to become someone else. The building looked smaller than she remembered, but the lock code hadn't changed. The door rolled up to reveal dust and memories and the skeletal remains of a half-finished Porsche restoration she'd abandoned 3 years ago. Alara parked the Jesco inside, killed the engine, and finally let herself breathe. She'd done it. Walked away from the life that had been slowly suffocating her, stolen the one thing Dominic valued more than his reputation. Come back to the world that had made sense before she'd tried to fit into spaces too small for who she actually was. Tomorrow she'd race. Tomorrow she'd prove she was still Nyx, still the driver who'd made grown men question their skills.
But tonight, in the silence of an old garage with oil stains on the floor and moonlight through grimy windows, she let herself remember what it felt like to be whole. The blood-red dress came off, replaced by coveralls she found in an old locker. The diamonds got tucked into a drawer. The $4 million hypercar got covered with a tarp. And Alara Vance, who had tried so hard to be Mrs. Dominic Rourke, finally admitted what she should have known from the start. You couldn't cage something built for speed and expect it not to break free. She curled up in the Jesco's passenger seat, exhausted and awake and terrified and alive, and waited for tomorrow. Morning came through the garage windows like an interrogation light, harsh and unforgiving. Alara woke with her neck cramped from sleeping in the Jesco's passenger seat and her dress wrinkled beyond salvation. The coveralls she'd found had smelled like 3-year-old motor oil and regret, but they'd been better than silk and diamonds for sleeping in a garage where the heat had been shut off sometime during the previous administration. Her phone sat on the dashboard where she'd left it, screen dark, battery at 12%. She didn't need to check it to know what waited there. Dominic would have escalated from concerned to furious to calculating by now. He'd have called his security team, maybe even Victor or Marcus, asking if anyone had seen his wife leaving with his favorite car. The thought made her smile, which felt strange after 3 years of carefully controlled expressions. She climbed out of the Jesco, joints protesting, and surveyed the garage in daylight, worse than she remembered. Dust covered everything like snow. The half-finished Porsche looked more like a parts car than a restoration project. And someone had broken in at least once, judging by the shattered window near the office door. But the tools were still here, hanging on their pegboards with the careful organization she'd insisted on back when this place had been her entire world. The hydraulic lift still worked when she hit the controls. The coffee maker in the office corner still had grounds in the filter from 3 years ago, which seemed fitting. Alara made coffee anyway, using water from the bathroom tap, and trying not to think about the last time she'd been in this building. The day before she'd married Dominic, she'd come here to finish paperwork on a client's Mustang rebuild, already wearing her engagement ring, already committed to a future that had seemed golden and possible. Lauren had been here that day. Her business partner, best friend, the person who'd co-signed the garage lease and helped build this place from a bankrupt body shop into something that mattered. They'd worked side by side for 4 years, built a reputation for quality work, and refusing to cut corners, turned away customers who wanted quick and cheap instead of right. Then Alara had met Dominic, and Lauren had watched her friend disappear into a life neither of them recognized. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber and poor decisions, but it was hot and caffeinated, and that was enough. Alara pulled out her phone, stared at the cracked screen, and scrolled past Dominic's increasingly aggressive messages until she found Lauren's contact. 3 years of silence sat between them like a wall. Lauren hadn't been invited to the wedding. Dominic had suggested a small ceremony, just family, and Alara had agreed because she'd been trying so hard to be the woman he wanted. Lauren had sent one text afterward. "Hope you know what you're doing." Alara had never responded. She typed, "I'm at the garage. If you're still talking to me, I could use a friend." The message sat there for 5 minutes before 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then, "Give me an hour." Alara used the time to make the garage look less like a crime scene. She swept, organized tools, checked the Porsche's status, and found it surprisingly salvageable. Someone had kept paying the utilities, which meant someone had cared enough to keep this place alive even after she'd abandoned it. She was under the Porsche's hood, checking compression on the cylinders, when the garage door rolled up and a pickup truck pulled in. Black Ford F25. Oh, lifted suspension, toolbox in the bed. Lauren climbed out wearing work boots and an expression that managed to be neutral and furious simultaneously. "So," Lauren said, stopping 10 feet away like Alara might be contagious. 3 years of nothing, and you show up at 6 a.m. asking for favors. That's bold." "I didn't ask for a favor. I asked for a friend." Friends don't ghost friends for 3 years because they married rich. The words landed like punches, accurate and deserved. Alara set down the compression gauge, wiped her hands on the coveralls, and met Lauren's eyes directly. You're right. I disappeared. I became someone I didn't recognize, and I let it happen because I was scared and stupid and trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. I'm sorry. Lauren's expression didn't soften, but something shifted in her posture. Where's the husband? Home, probably, wondering where his car is. That's his car? Lauren moved closer to the covered Jesco, lifted the tarp, and whistled low. Jesus Christ, Alara, you stole a Koenigsegg? Borrowed. Borrowed implies returning it. Lauren dropped the tarp, crossed her arms. You planning on returning it? No. Then you stole it. A pause. Good for you. The tension broke slightly. Alara felt something in her chest loosen, just a fraction. I need a place to stay, just for a few days until I figure things out. I can't go back there, and hotels are going to ask questions about... She gestured at the Jesco, the coveralls, the general disaster of her current situation. Lauren studied her for a long moment. You racing tonight? How did you... Dante called me at 5 a.m., told me Nix was back and driving a $4 million hypercar in tonight's circuit, which seemed unlikely until I saw your text. Lauren moved to the coffee maker, poured herself a cup, tasted it, and grimaced. This is terrible. I know. You've been gone 3 years and you still make terrible coffee. Some things don't change. Lauren leaned against the workbench, cradling the terrible coffee like it was precious. You know what you're walking into tonight. People have been waiting for Nix to come back. There are legends about you now. That time you beat 6 guys in a row without breaking a sweat. The sponsorship deals you turned down. The way you just vanished like smoke. She paused. They're going to expect miracles. I'm not trying to be a legend. I'm just trying to remember how to be myself. By racing a stolen hypercar against people who've been training for 3 years while you played housewife. The words stung because they were partially true. I wasn't playing anything. I was surviving. Something in Lauren's expression shifted then, the anger giving way to something softer and more complicated. He hurt you? Not the way you mean. He just... Alara struggled to find words that made sense. He made me small, made me quiet, made me into this perfect, lifeless thing that smiled at the right times and never asked questions and existed only to make him look good. She met Lauren's eyes, and I let him. That's the part I can't forgive. I let him turn me into someone I hated. Lauren set down her coffee cup with careful precision. You can stay at my place. I've got a spare room, and it's not fancy, but it's got a door that locks and neighbors who mind their own business. You don't have to shut up and say thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Now let's see if you remember how to work on a car, or if 3 years of charity luncheons killed all your brain cells. They spent the next 4 hours rebuilding the Porsche's engine, falling into the rhythm they'd perfected during their partnership. Lauren handled the precision work, Alara managed the heavy lifting, and they communicated in the shorthand of people who'd worked together long enough to finish each other's sentences. Around noon, Lauren ordered takeout from the Thai place 3 blocks over. Still there, still good, still putting too much heat in their pad, CU. They ate sitting on the garage floor, backs against the Jesco's tires, grease under their fingernails. So, Lauren said between bites, tonight, you nervous? Terrified. Good. Means you're not stupid. Lauren pointed chopsticks at her. But here's the thing, you're going to show up in that car and people are going to lose their minds. The Jesco's worth more than most of them will make in their lifetimes. You're going to look like everything they hate about rich people slumming in their world. Alara hadn't thought about that. She'd been so focused on escaping, on reclaiming herself, that she hadn't considered how it would look. What do I do? Win. Win so decisively that nobody can say you bought the victory. Win like Nix used to win, with skill and nerve and absolute refusal to back down. Lauren finished her noodles, set the container aside. And maybe don't mention you're married to Dominic Rourke. How do you know who I married? I looked you up. After you ghosted me, I needed to know if you were alive or dead or just done with people like me. Found your wedding announcement in the society pages. Very tasteful, very expensive, very much not you. Lauren's voice went flat. Dominic Rourke, money launderer, drug trafficker, probably responsible for at least a dozen murders the police can't prove. You married a crime lord, Alara. I know what he is. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you married a monster and spent 3 years pretending it was normal. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Alara set down her food, suddenly nauseous. I didn't know, not at first. He was charming and interested and made me feel like I mattered. By the time I understood what his business actually involved, I was already... She stopped, the admission catching in her throat. Already what? Already trapped. He made it clear what would happen if I left. Not threats exactly, just implications. Stories about people who disappointed him. I got scared. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. Then, is he going to come looking for you? Eventually. And when he does? Alara thought about Dominic's face when he realized she'd taken the Jesco, about the 17 missed calls, about the inevitable moment when he tracked her down and demanded explanations. I don't know. Well, that's comforting. They cleaned up the lunch debris in silence, the easy camaraderie from earlier strained by the weight of reality. Lauren checked her phone, frowned, typed something quickly. I've got to run some errands before tonight, she said. You're welcome to come with, or you can stay here and keep working on the Porsche. Up to you. I'll stay. I need to check the Jesco's systems anyway. Make sure everything's running right. Lauren nodded, grabbed her keys, headed for the door. She paused at the threshold, turned back. For what it's worth, I'm glad you got out, even if it took 3 years in Grand Theft Auto. Then she was gone, and Alara was alone with a stolen hypercar and approximately 9 hours until she had to prove she was still worth remembering. She spent the afternoon doing what she knew best, working on cars. The Jesco was mechanically perfect, but she checked every system anyway, running diagnostics, testing responses, familiarizing herself with the vehicle's capabilities. Dominic had paid for every possible upgrade, turning an already ridiculous car into something that pushed the boundaries of street legal. Around 4, her phone rang. Not Dominic this time. Dante. You still planning on showing up tonight? He asked without preamble. Yes? Good. Because I just took 15 grand in bets on whether Nix is actually back or if this is some rich girl playing dress-up in her daddy's car. I don't have a father. Figure of speech. Point is, people are talking. Word got out about the Jesco, and now half the circuit thinks you're going to show up and embarrass yourself, while the other half thinks you're going to break records. He paused. No pressure. Who am I racing against? Kira Volkov volunteered first, Marcus Webb second. Then some kid named Jason who drives a modified Supra and has more confidence than sense. Paper rustled on his end. 3 races, elimination style. You lose 1, you're out. Win all 3, you're officially back. What's the prize? For you, respect. For everyone else, 50 grand split between the top 3 finishers. Alara did the math. 50,000 split 3 ways, assuming she won all 3 races and nobody else placed. Not life-changing money, but enough to matter for people who measured success in car parts and rent payments. What time? 9 p.m. Same place as last night. Course is different, though. We're using the old factory loop near the river. 4 miles, 12 turns. One section where the road's barely wider than a car length. Dante's voice went serious. Alara, Nix, whoever you are right now, this isn't like 3 years ago. The drivers have gotten better, the stakes have gotten higher, and people are watching who weren't watching before. You sure you're ready? She looked at the Jesco, at the tools hung precisely on their pegboards, at her hands still stained with oil despite washing them twice. I'm ready. Okay then, see you at 9, and Nix, don't die. I've got money on you. He hung up before she could respond. 6 hours until the race. Alara used them methodically. Shower in the garage's questionable bathroom. Change into clothes Lauren had left in a bag by the door. Jeans, t-shirt, leather jacket that smelled like cigarettes and better decisions. Eat something that wasn't 3-day-old Thai food. Her phone buzzed constantly. She'd stopped checking the messages hours ago, but the notifications piled up like accusations. Dominic had moved past anger into something colder and more calculated. His latest message read simply, I know where you are. We'll talk soon. The implied threat was clear, but Alara found she didn't care as much as she should have. 3 years of walking on eggshells, monitoring her words, making herself smaller. It had left her with a deficit of fear. She'd used it all up being terrified of disappointing a man who saw her as furniture. Lauren returned around 7 with food, coffee that didn't taste like regret. and an expression that meant she had news. "So," she said, unpacking burgers and fries onto the workbench. "Interesting development. Your husband posted a $50,000 reward for information leading to the return of his stolen vehicle." Alara's stomach dropped. "When?" 2 hours ago. Posted on every car forum, collector group, and social media platform he could find. Lauren pulled out her phone, showed Alara the posting. Professional photo of the Jesco, detailed description, contact information, and a number that would make most people's eyes water. "He's trying to flush me out. Looks like. Also, looks like he's pissed." Lauren bit into her burger, chewed thoughtfully. "You know, for someone who called you a lifeless ornament, he seems pretty invested in getting you back." "It's not about me. It's about control. I embarrassed him by leaving." "Good. He deserves to be embarrassed." They ate in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the evening pressing down. Finally, Lauren asked the question Alara had been avoiding. "What happens after tonight? You win the races, prove you're still Nick's, then what? Dominic's not going to just let you vanish. He's got resources, connections, people who owe him favors. Eventually, he's going to track you down, and when he does, I'll deal with it then." "That's not a plan." "It's the only plan I've got." Lauren opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she pulled a set of keys from her pocket, slid them across the workbench. "Apartment address is on the tag. Code to get in is 4729. Make yourself at home, don't touch my tools, and for the love of everything mechanical, don't bring your crime lord husband to my doorstep." "I won't." "You'd better not. I like my kneecaps unbroken." 8:30 came too fast and too slow simultaneously. Alara covered the Jesco with the tarp one more time, checked that the garage was locked, and climbed into Lauren's pickup for the drive to the industrial park. The route took them through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher, past businesses that operated on cash-only principles and moral flexibility. The kind of places where questions weren't asked and memories were selectively poor. Cars were already gathering when they arrived, headlights cutting through the darkness like spotlights. More than last night, word had spread about Nix's return, and curiosity had drawn a crowd. Alara counted at least 60 vehicles, which meant 200 people minimum, all waiting to see if the legend matched reality. "You want me to stay?" Lauren asked, killing the engine. "No, this is something I need to do alone." "Okay, but call me when it's over. I want to know if you're alive or in jail." Alara climbed out of the truck, waited until Lauren drove away, then walked to where she'd hidden the Jesco 3 blocks east in an alley she'd scouted during the afternoon. The tarp came off smoothly, and the car gleamed in the streetlight like a promise. She climbed in, started the engine, and felt that same rush of recognition. This was right. This was real. This was who she'd been before she'd tried to become someone else. The drive to the circuit took 3 minutes. She could hear the crowd before she saw them, that particular frequency of excitement and aggression that came from people gathered around something dangerous. Alara pulled into the staging area, and conversations died like someone had hit a kill switch. The Jesco sat there under the industrial lights, $4 million of carbon fiber and engineering, completely out of place among the modified streetcars and rebuilt racers. She could feel the crowd's attention like a physical weight, judgment and curiosity and resentment all mixed together. She killed the engine and stepped out. Dante appeared almost immediately, pushing through the crowd like a linebacker. "You're late." "I'm 2 minutes early. For this crowd, that's late. They've been placing bets for the last hour." He lowered his voice. "Alara, people are talking. About the car. About the reward posting. About whether you're actually Nick's or some rich girl stealing her identity. Let them talk. It's not that simple. Kira Volkov is asking questions. Her uncle Alexei has connections to..." He stopped, eyes widening slightly. "To your husband. She knows who you are." The words hit like cold water. Alara turned, scanning the crowd until she found Kira leaning against a red Nissan GTR, arms crossed, expression calculating. Their eyes met across 30 feet of pavement, and Kira smiled. Not friendly, predatory. "This is going to be a problem," Dante muttered. "Only if I let it be." Alara moved toward Kira with deliberate calm, closing the distance before her nerves could catch up with her decision. Kira pushed off the Nissan, meeting her halfway. Up close, she was smaller than Alara expected, maybe 5'4", compact build, dark hair pulled back tight. But her eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen violence up close and learned to use it. "So," Kira said. "Nix. The legend returns, except legends don't usually steal cars from Dominic Rourke and show up at underground races." "Who says I stole it?" "The $50,000 reward posting. The fact that my uncle was at your house last night for some gala, and this morning he got a call asking if anyone in our organization had seen you." Kira's smile widened. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." "Maybe both. Definitely both." Kira circled slowly, assessing. "Here's what I know. You're Dominic Rourke's wife. You disappeared last night with his favorite car. Now you're here, claiming to be a driver from 3 years ago, expecting everyone to just accept it." She stopped circling, met Alara's eyes directly. "I don't believe you." "Then race me and find out." The challenge hung in the air between them. Around them, the crowd had gone quiet, sensing conflict. Kira laughed, sharp and genuine. "Okay, I like you. Still think you're going to embarrass yourself, but I like the confidence." She extended her hand. "May the best driver win." Alara shook it, noting the calluses that matched her own, the grip that tested without being aggressive. Looking forward to it, Kira walked back to her GTR, and the crowd noise resumed like someone had unmuted the world. Dante appeared at Alara's elbow. "That went better than expected." "Did it?" "She didn't threaten to tell Dominic where you are, so yeah, I'd call that a win." He checked his watch. "We're starting in 10. First race is you against Kira, 4-mile circuit. Winner advances. You ready?" "No, yes, maybe." Alara nodded. "Good. Get in position." The starting line had been marked with spray paint and burning barrels, dramatic and illegal and perfect. Alara pulled the Jesco into position, Kira's GTR rolling up beside her. Through the window, she could see Kira's expression, focused, determined, completely locked in. This was real. This was happening. 3 years of silence and submission and making herself small, and now she was about to race against someone who had no idea what Nix had been capable of. The question was she still capable of it? A woman climbed onto a platform made of stacked pallets, holding a flare gun pointed at the sky. The crowd pressed close, phones out, money changing hands, everyone waiting for the explosion. Alara's hands found the steering wheel, fingers curving into familiar positions. Her breathing steadied. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into something useful. Adrenaline, focus, the sharp clarity that came from knowing the only way out was through. The flare gun fired, red light arcing into the darkness. Alara launched. The Jesco's acceleration was obscene, 0 to 80 in less time than it took to process. Beside her, Kira's GTR kept pace through pure skill, the driver compensating for horsepower disadvantages with perfect line selection. The first turn came up fast, 90-degree right, barely any runoff, marked by burning barrels that cast dancing shadows. Alara braked late, turned in hard, felt the rear end step out slightly before the traction control caught it. Beside her, Kira took a different line, braking earlier but carrying more speed through the apex. They exited the turn side by side, neither giving ground. The circuit opened into a straightaway, half a mile of cracked pavement. This was where the Jesco should have pulled away, where horsepower mattered more than skill. But Kira knew her car intimately, finding draft and momentum that shouldn't have been possible. Turn 2. Left-hander with decreasing radius. Alara read it 3 seconds ahead, adjusted her line, trusted the Jesco's grip. The car responded perfectly, hugging the inside curb, eating up pavement. Kira went wide, trying to carry more speed, but the GTR's rear end got loose and she had to lift. Alara took the lead by 2 car lengths. Turn 3, 4, 5 then. The circuit became a blur of burning barrels and screaming engines and absolute concentration. Somewhere behind them, Jason's Supra was trying to keep up, but this race was between 2 drivers who understood what it meant to push beyond rational limits. The narrow section Dante had mentioned appeared ahead, old factory walls on both sides, barely wider than the Jesco's track width. Alara didn't lift, trusting her peripheral vision, feeling the car's position through the steering wheel feedback. Carbon fiber scraped against brick once, twice, but she held the line. Behind her, Kira hesitated for half a second. That was all it took. Alara emerged from the narrow section with a 5-car length lead and 3 turns to go. The Jesco felt like an extension of her nervous system now,
responding to thoughts before they became conscious actions. This was what she'd missed, this complete immersion, this perfect synthesis of human and machine.
The final turn, long sweeping right that fed into the finish straight. She took it at the limit, feeling the tires begin to protest, backing off just enough to maintain grip. The finish line appeared ahead, marked by burning barrels and screaming crowds. She crossed it at 143 miles per hour, Kira 4 seconds behind, Jason a distant third. Elara killed the engine and sat there, hands still on the wheel, breathing like she'd run a marathon. The crowd noise filtered through the windows, cheering, arguing, placing new bets. She'd won. First race. First step toward proving she was still Nyx. Kira pulled up alongside, killed her engine, climbed out. Elara did the same, legs shaking slightly from adrenaline come down. Okay, Kira said, walking over with an expression that mixed respect and irritation. You can actually drive, I'll give you that. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. That was the easy race. Marcus is next, and he's going to make you work for it. As if summoned, Marcus Webb appeared, pushing through the crowd with mechanical precision. Up close, he looked even more like an accountant. Wireframe glasses, carefully trimmed beard, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. But his eyes were different, sharp, analytical, constantly processing information. Nyx, he said, the name carrying just enough skepticism to be insulting. Impressive run, clean lines, good tire management, excellent mechanical sympathy. He paused. Of course, it's easier when you're driving a car worth more than most people's houses. Then beat me in yours. Marcus smiled, thin and cold. I intend to. Marcus walked back to his car, a silver BMW M4 that looked stock from the outside but sounded like controlled violence when he started the engine. The exhaust note was deeper than factory, tuned to a frequency that suggested expensive internal work and zero concern for street legality. Dante materialized beside Elara, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cool night air. You've got 20 minutes before the next race. Marcus requested time to check his tire pressures, which really means he's doing last-minute adjustments to make sure his car's dialed in perfectly. What do I need to know about him? Everything I told you last night still stands. Ex-Formula 3, banned for anger management issues, ended up here because nowhere legitimate will touch him. Dante lowered his voice. But here's what I didn't mention. Marcus doesn't just want to win. He wants to prove something. Every race is personal for him, like he's arguing with ghosts nobody else can see. Elara watched Marcus methodically checking his tire pressures with a digital gauge, recording numbers in a small notebook. What's he trying to prove? That he was good enough. That getting banned was politics, not skill. That everyone who said he'd never make it was wrong. Dante shrugged. Classic chip-on-shoulder stuff. Makes him fast, but also makes him dangerous. He'll take risks that don't make sense if he thinks it'll prove a point. Good to know. Also, he hates people with money. Like, really hates them. So showing up in a $4 million hypercar basically painted a target on your back the size of Nebraska. Elara looked at the Jesco, gleaming under the industrial lights. Impossible to miss or ignore. Not much I can do about that now. No, but you can use it. Let him get angry, let him make mistakes trying to beat you, then capitalize on it. Dante checked his watch. 15 minutes. You should walk the modified section of the course. Marcus convinced me to change it up for the second race. The modified section turned out to be a nightmare wrapped in poor decisions. Someone had brought in concrete barriers, creating a chicane that would require heavy braking followed by aggressive acceleration, then immediately feeding into a decreasing radius turn that would punish anyone carrying too much speed. Elara stood there visualizing the line, trying to calculate the Jesco's capabilities against the physics of the situation. The car had the power to accelerate out of the chicane faster than anything else on the circuit, but that same power could become a liability if she got greedy. Designed it myself, Marcus said from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. The chicane rewards precision over horsepower. The turn after punishes anyone who thinks money can buy talent. She turned to face him. You really don't like me. I don't know you well enough to like or dislike you, but I know your type. Rich wife playing rebel, driving husband's car to feel alive for a night, then going back to charity luncheons and pretending this never happened. He adjusted his glasses, the motion precise and controlled. Meanwhile, people like me scrape together parts money and pray nothing breaks because we can't afford backups. You don't know anything about me, don't I? You showed up in a Koenigsegg.
That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities." The anger that flared in Alara's chest was sharp and immediate, but she forced it down. Getting emotional was what he wanted. "Then beat me on the track. Prove I'm just money and no skill." Marcus smiled that thin smile again. "I intend to."
He walked away, leaving Alara standing in front of the chicane, hands clenched into fists. The assumptions were wrong, but also partially right, which made them harder to dismiss. Yes, she'd shown up in an expensive car. Yes, she was married to someone wealthy and dangerous. But the reasons behind those facts were more complicated than Marcus's neat little narrative allowed for. Not that she owed him explanations. Dante's voice crackled over a bullhorn, calling drivers to staging. Alara walked back to the Jesco, climbed in, and forced herself to breathe evenly. The first race had been about proving she could still drive. This race was about proving she belonged here, that Nyx wasn't just a memory wrapped in nostalgia. Marcus pulled his M4 alongside her, engine idling at perfect RPMs, everything about his preparation screaming competence and control. Through their windows, their eyes met. His expression was unreadable behind those wireframe glasses. The woman with the flare gun climbed back onto her platform, and the crowd noise swelled. More people had shown up since the first race. Word was spreading, phones were recording, and every second of this was being documented for people who couldn't be here in person. Alara's phone sat in the center console, powered off. A dozen voicemails she'd never listened to waiting in digital limbo. Dominic would know by now. Someone in this crowd would have recognized the car, put together the pieces, maybe even called the number on that reward posting. She had maybe hours before this all came crashing down, which meant she needed to make these hours count. The flare gun fired. Marcus launched perfectly, his M4's all-wheel drive system putting power down with clinical efficiency. The Jesco had more horsepower but rear-wheel drive, which meant Alara had to be more careful with throttle application. By the time traction caught, Marcus had a one-car-length lead. The first turn came fast, the same 90-degree right from the previous race. Marcus braked impossibly late, his car rotating through the apex like it was on rails. Alara matched his braking point, felt the Jesco's rear end step out, corrected with steering and throttle, came out of the turn half a car length behind. They hit the straightaway side by side, engines screaming, speedometers climbing into triple digits. This was where the Jesco should have walked away, but Marcus had done something to his M4, nitrous probably, or an aggressive tune that sacrificed reliability for power. They stayed locked together through 140, 150, neither giving an inch. The chicane appeared ahead, concrete barriers forming an S shape that looked tighter than it had on foot. Marcus braked first, his car diving into the gap with precision. Alara braked a fraction later, trying to carry more speed, immediately regretted it. The Jesco was too wide, too fast, too much car for the space available. She had to brake harder mid-corner, scrubbing speed, the rear end threatening to come around. She caught it, muscled through, but lost 2 car lengths to Marcus in the process. The decreasing radius turn was next, and Marcus had been right. It punished speed. He took it perfectly. Early apex, rolling speed, setting up for the exit. Alara went in too hot, had to brake mid-corner again, felt the car pushing toward understeer. She fought it, got back on power too early, felt the rear tires light up. Marcus extended his lead to 4 car lengths. The next section was all technical corners, one feeding into another with minimal recovery time. This was where Marcus excelled. He drove like a computer, every input calculated, nothing wasted. The M4 flowed through the corners like water finding the path of least resistance. Alara drove like someone remembering a language they hadn't spoken in 3 years. The instincts were there, buried under layers of forced domesticity, but they kept getting tangled with overthinking. She'd brake too early, then overcorrect by braking too late. She'd turn in perfectly, then question herself and adjust mid-corner. By the halfway point, Marcus led by 8 car lengths, and the gap was growing. The crowd noise changed quality, disappointment filtering through the excitement. They'd wanted a fight, wanted the legend to match reality, wanted Nyx to prove the 3-year absence hadn't dulled her edge. Instead, they were watching her get systematically dismantled by a driver who'd spent those 3 years improving while she'd spent them attending galas and making herself small. The anger came back, but this time Alara didn't push it down. She let it fuel her, remind her of everything she'd given up, everyone she'd tried to please, all the years of making herself less so Dominic could feel like more. She wasn't doing that anymore. The next turn was a long left-hander with concrete wall on the outside. Marcus took his perfect line, clipping the apex, setting up for the exit. Alara took a different line, later turn-in, tighter radius, trusting the Jesco's grip and her ability to read the limit. The rear tires protested but held. She got on power earlier than Marcus, the Jesco's horsepower advantage finally mattering. The gap closed by 2 car lengths, Marcus noticed. She saw him check his mirror, saw the microscopic adjustment in his line. He was fast, but he was also rattled. The lead that should have been safe wasn't anymore. 3 turns left before the finish. The course fed them into a flat-out right-hander that required absolute commitment. Marcus took it at the limit, his M4 using every inch of pavement. Alara took it past the limit, trusting the Jesco's downforce and her own nerve. They exited side by side, the gap erased. 2 turns remaining. Marcus changed his approach, taking defensive lines that prioritized position over speed. Smart driving. Conservative. The kind of racing that won championships. But this wasn't a championship. This was personal. The penultimate turn was a tight hairpin that fed immediately into the final corner. Marcus braked early, protecting the inside. Alara braked later, went around the outside, carrying more speed but using more pavement. They were wheel-to-wheel through the hairpin, neither backing off, both refusing to yield. Paint traded between carbon fiber and metal, the sound like gunshots in the confined space. Marcus had position going into the final turn, but Alara had momentum. The Jesco's power meant she could out-accelerate him on the run to the finish if she could just get alongside. The final turn was a sweeping right that seemed gentle until you were actually in it, camber changing halfway through, the exit tighter than the entry. Marcus took the racing line, but Alara went high, using the banking that wasn't supposed to be there, trusting grip that shouldn't exist. The Jesco's right side tires caught the concrete barrier, grinding against it with a sound like the universe screaming. But she held it, kept the power down, and came off the banking with fractionally more speed than Marcus's textbook exit. The finish line was 300 feet away. 200. 100. They crossed it simultaneously, or close enough that nobody watching could call it definitively. Alara hit the brakes, slowing from 140 to something approaching legal, her heart trying to escape through her ribcage. Marcus slowed beside her, both cars coasting to a stop in the runoff area. Through the windows, she could see his expression, shocked, angry, and something that might have been respect. The crowd descended before either of them could exit their cars, phones, and questions and arguments about who'd actually won. Dante pushed through the chaos, looking equal parts relieved and stressed. "That was too close to call from where I was standing," he shouted over the noise. "We're going to photo review. Give me 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes stretched into 10, then 15. Alara sat in the Jesco with the engine off, listening to arguments rage outside. Some people insisted Marcus had won by millimeters. Others swore Alara had crossed first. A few suggested they'd tied, which apparently wasn't allowed under circuit rules. Marcus climbed out of his M4, walked over, tapped on her window. She opened the door. "That was reckless," he said. "No preamble, no congratulations. Using the banking like that could have killed you." "But it didn't. This time. Next time you might not be lucky." He paused, adjusting those glasses. "You're better than I expected. Still don't like the car you're driving, but you're not just money. I'll give you that." "Thanks, I think." "Don't thank me. If you won, and that's still if, you've got Jason next. Kid drives like physics or suggestions, and he's been watching both our races. He'll know your patterns." "What patterns?" "You brake late in technical sections but early in high-speed turns. You trust your car in places where you shouldn't, and you get aggressive when you're behind, which is exploitable if someone knows it's coming." Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. "Also, your husband's here." The words hit like cold water. "What?" "Dominic Rourke showed up about 5 minutes ago with security detail and everything. Dante's trying to keep him away from the staging area, but it's only a matter of time." Marcus's expression was unreadable. "Kira was right. You did steal that car." He walked away before Alara could formulate a response. The crowd noise had changed again, taking on an edge that suggested trouble. She could hear Dante's voice raised in protest. Another voice responding with the kind of calm that preceded violence. Alara climbed out of the Jesco and immediately spotted Dominic. Hard not to. He stood 6 inches taller than most of the crowd, wearing a suit that cost more than half the cars here, flanked by two security guys who looked like they bench-pressed small vehicles for fun. Their eyes met across 50 feet of industrial pavement. Dominic's expression was carefully neutral, but Alara had learned to read the micro-expressions underneath. Anger, embarrassment, calculation, and something else, something she'd never seen before. He was looking at her like she was a stranger. "Mrs. Rourke," his voice carried despite not being raised. "We need to talk." The crowd had gone quiet, sensing drama that was better than any race. Phones were definitely recording now, documenting everything for social media dissection later. Alara walked toward him with deliberate calm, keeping her body language neutral. Whatever was about to happen, she wouldn't give the crowd the satisfaction of seeing fear. "Mr. Rourke," she replied, matching his formality. "This is unexpected." "Is it? You steal my car, disappear for 24 hours, ignore 17 calls, and think I won't track you down?" He gestured at the Jesco. "That car is worth $4 million. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I didn't steal it. I borrowed it." "Borrowing implies permission. You had none." His security guys shifted position, not quite threatening, but definitely present. "We're leaving. Now." "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Behind Dominic, his security tensed. Around them, the crowd went from quiet to silent, everyone waiting for the explosion. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "I said no. I'm not leaving. I'm in the middle of something, and you showing up doesn't change that. You're in the middle of committing grand theft auto at an illegal street race. The only place you're going is home, where we can discuss this privately." "Discuss? Is that what you call it?" Alara felt the anger rising, 3 years of swallowed words trying to escape simultaneously. "You mean you'll tell me what I did wrong, explain how I've embarrassed you, remind me that my job is to be seen and not heard? This isn't the place." "No, this is exactly the place. You want to know where I've been? I've been remembering who I was before I married you, before I made myself small enough to fit in your world, before I became a lifeless ornament." Dominic's expression cracked, surprise breaking through the control. "You heard that?" "Every word. You were standing outside the powder room, telling Marcus I was decorative and nothing more, that I served my purpose." Her voice stayed level despite the fury underneath. "So I decided to stop serving your purposes and start remembering my own." The security guys looked uncomfortable now, trapped between their employer and a domestic situation that wasn't in their job description. Dante had appeared at the edge of the crowd, phone in hand, clearly ready to call for backup if this went sideways. Dominic took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Alara, whatever you think you heard, I know what I heard. I'm done pretending otherwise." "Then let's discuss it at home. Like adults, not here, in front of—" He gestured at the crowd, disgust evident. These people are more real than anyone at your galas. They don't pretend to be something they're not. They don't call their wives ornaments behind their backs." Alara crossed her arms. "I'm staying. I'm finishing the races. Then I'll decide what happens next." "You'll decide?" Dominic's voice took on an edge she recognized. Dangerous. "You seem to be confused about how this works. You're my wife. That car is my property. You don't get to decide anything without my input." "See, that's the problem right there. You think I'm property too." The accusation landed hard enough that Dominic actually stepped back. For a moment, his carefully constructed mask slipped completely, revealing something that might have been genuine hurt. "That's not— I never said—" He stopped, recalibrated. 3 years we've been married. 3 years I've provided everything you could possibly want. And this is how you repay me? By stealing from me and humiliating me in public? You humiliated me every time you introduced me as your wife and expected me to shut up and smile. Every time you made decisions without asking my opinion. Every time you looked through me like I was furniture." Alara's voice cracked slightly, emotion breaking through. "I made myself into nothing for you, and you never even noticed." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crowd seemed to be holding its breath. Dante's voice broke the moment. "Photo review is finished. Alara won by 18 inches. The announcement should have triggered celebration, but nobody moved. The drama between Dominic and Alara was too compelling, too raw, too real for the usual circuit chaos. Dominic looked at Dante, then at the Jesco, then back at Alara. You won a race.
Yes. In my car. Yes. And you have another race scheduled? Yes.
He laughed, sharp and humorless. Of course you do. My wife, the street racer. How did I not see this coming? He ran a hand through his hair, the first genuinely uncontrolled gesture Alara had seen from him in years. What do you want from me, Alara? An apology? Permission to keep the car? A divorce? The word divorce hit harder than it should have. Alara hadn't let herself think that far ahead, too focused on escaping to consider what escape actually meant long term. I don't know, she admitted. I just know I can't go back to being the person I was yesterday. The person you were yesterday was my wife. The person I was yesterday was dying a slow death at charity luncheons. She gestured at the circuit, the crowd, the Jesco. This is me alive. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're serious? Yes. You'd really rather be here with these people than at home with me. These people don't call me an ornament. That landed. She could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his jaw clenched. Shame, maybe. Or anger. With Dominic, it was hard to tell the difference. Fine, he said finally. You want to finish your races? Finish them. But understand something. That car represents a significant investment. You damage it, you're liable. I won't damage it. You already scraped the carbon fiber against a concrete wall. I could see it from here. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm texting Victor. He'll stay and observe. If anything happens to that car, he'll handle the situation. It wasn't permission exactly, more like conditional tolerance. Alara would take it. Understood. Dominic started to leave, then turned back. The lifeless ornament comment. I was venting frustration to Marcus about other things. It came out wrong. It came out honest. Maybe, but it wasn't the whole truth. He held her gaze. You want to know the whole truth? You terrified me. From the moment we met, you terrified me. You were so alive, so certain of yourself, so completely untouchable. I didn't know how to be with someone like that, so I tried to make you smaller, safer, easier to understand. He paused. I was wrong. The admission shocked her more than anything else that had happened tonight. Dominic never admitted being wrong, never showed weakness, never let the mask slip. I need time, she said, to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be what you want. Take your time. But Alara? He waited until she met his eyes. Don't crash my car. Then he was gone. Security detail following, the crowd parting to let them through. Victor appeared from somewhere, positioning himself near the staging area with the kind of casual menace that suggested he was armed and willing. Dante approached carefully. Well, that was intense. Yeah. You okay? I have no idea. Alara looked at the Jesco, at the scrape on the carbon fiber that would probably cost 20 grand to fix properly. How long until the next race? 30 minutes. Jason's getting his super ready now. Dante lowered his voice. That thing with Dominic. You sure you know what you're doing? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Fair enough. Come on, let's get you some water and away from the cameras. He led her to a makeshift pit area where tools and spare parts were scattered across folding tables. Lauren was there, leaning against her pickup truck, expression unreadable. Saw your husband showed up, Lauren said. Thought I might need to bail you out of a kidnapping situation. He let me stay. Did he? Or did you give him no choice? Lauren handed her a water bottle. Either way, that took guts. Stupid guts, but guts. Alara drank half the bottle in one go, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Marcus says I have patterns, exploitable ones. Marcus is a pretentious ass who got banned from real racing for punching a race steward, so take his analysis with appropriate skepticism. Lauren pulled out her phone, showed Alara a video someone had posted. But he's not wrong. You brake early in high-speed corners, probably a habit from the Jesco being more car than you're used to. The video showed Alara's race against Marcus from 3 different angles, all posted in the last 10 minutes. The internet worked fast when it smelled drama. Jason's going to see these, Alara said. Everybody's going to see these. You're trending on 3 platforms right now. Rich wife steals husband's hypercar for illegal street race is peak internet content. Lauren put the phone away. Question is, can you adapt? Can you change your patterns mid-competition? I did it once. Against Marcus, last section. Once isn't enough. Jason's young, but he's not stupid. He'll bait you into those patterns and punish you for them. Lauren checked her watch. You've got 25 minutes. Use them to walk the course again. Find new lines. Forget everything you think you know about how to drive that car. It was good advice. Elara finished the water, tossed the bottle in a recycling bin someone had optimistically placed near the pit area, and headed back to the circuit. The course looked different on foot than at speed. Details emerged. A patch of oil someone had tried to cover with kitty litter, a crack in the pavement that could unsettle a car if you hit it wrong. Camber changes that weren't obvious until you were looking for them. Jason found her near the chicane, studying the concrete barriers. Up close, he looked even younger than she'd expected, maybe 22, with the kind of confidence that came from never having been seriously hurt. "Nix," he said, the name carrying weight. "Been watching your races. You're good, better than good, but you telegraph your moves." "Marcus tell you that?" "Didn't have to. I've got eyes." Jason kicked at the barrier, testing its placement. "This chicane, you're going to brake too early because you're in an expensive car and you're scared of damaging it. I'm in a Supra I built from salvage parts. I've got nothing to lose." "That makes you dangerous or stupid." "Maybe both." He grinned, all teeth and recklessness. "But it also makes me fast. You're carrying baggage, the husband, the car, the comeback story. I'm just here to win." The simplicity of it was almost beautiful. Jason didn't care about legends or reputations or proving anything except that he could beat whoever was next to him. Pure competition, uncomplicated by history. "May the best driver win," Elara said. "Already planning on it." He walked away, leaving Elara standing in front of the chicane, thinking about patterns and expectations and the weight of expensive cars. Lauren was right. She needed to forget everything she thought she knew. The 20 minutes before the final race felt like 20 hours. Elara sat in the Jesco with the door open, engine off, trying to quiet the noise in her head. Around her, the crowd had swelled to maybe 300 people. Word had spread about Dominic's appearance, about the confrontation, about the wife who'd stolen her husband's hypercar and was now racing it against kids half her age. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on out of morbid curiosity and immediately regretted it. Text from Dominic. "Victor says the front splitter's cracked. That's another $15,000. She didn't respond. What was she supposed to say? Sorry for living? Another text, this one from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Alexei Volkov. Your husband asked me to extend an offer. Return the vehicle undamaged, come home quietly, and this incident will be forgotten. Continue this foolishness, and there will be consequences." Elara stared at the message, reading the threat underneath the polite language. Alexei Volkov didn't make idle promises. If he said there would be consequences, he meant it. She deleted the message and turned the phone off again. Lauren appeared at the car door, holding 2 energy drinks and looking worried. "You're doing that thing where you think too much. Stop it." "Alexei Volkov just threatened me." "Of course he did. You're making his business associate look weak. Can't have that in their world." Lauren handed her one of the drinks. "But here's the thing, you're not in their world right now. You're in ours. And in our world, the only thing that matters is whether you can drive faster than the person next to you." "Jason's good. Really good." "So are you. You just forgot for a while." Lauren cracked open her drink, took a long pull. "I watched the videos from your first 2 races. You know what I saw? Someone remembering how to be herself. First race against Kira, you were cautious, testing limits. Second race against Marcus, you started trusting your instincts again. This race against Jason? This is where you stop holding back. The car's already damaged. It's a car. Cars can be fixed. You know what can't be fixed? Regret. You came here to prove something. To yourself, to Dominic, to everyone who watched you disappear 3 years ago. Don't stop now because you're worried about a cracked splitter." Dante's voice boomed over the bullhorn. "Final race staging in 5 minutes. Drivers to your vehicles." Elara finished the energy drink, feeling the caffeine and sugar hit her system like a shot of clarity. Lauren was right. She'd come this far. Turning back now would make everything, the confrontation with Dominic, the damaged car, the threats from Volkov, meaningless. "Thanks," she said. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you win." Lauren stepped back. "Now go remind these people why they were scared of Nix. Jason's Supra rolled into position, the car sitting low and aggressive, exhaust popping on deceleration. Someone had spent serious money on that build. The engine note alone suggested a built motor, upgraded turbos, probably a strengthened transmission to handle the power. Elara pulled the Jesko alongside him, and the contrast was almost comical. His car looked like a street fighter, all function and barely contained violence. Hers looked like it had escaped from a museum, pristine and expensive and completely out of place. Through the windows, Jason caught her eye and smiled. Not mean, just confident. The smile of someone who'd already decided how this would end. The crowd pressed closer than in the previous races, phones held high, everyone wanting the perfect angle. Victor stood near the starting line, arms crossed, face impassive. Whatever he was supposed to do if she damaged the car further, he was ready to do it. The woman with the flare gun climbed her platform one last time. The circuit stretched ahead into darkness, burning barrels marking the way like a path through hell. Elara's hands found the steering wheel. Her breathing steadied. The fear didn't disappear. Fear was useful, kept you sharp. But it transformed into focus. Jason revved his engine, the Supra's turbos spooling up with a sound like incoming missiles. Showing off, maybe. Or just getting the turbos up to pressure for the launch. Elara didn't rev back. The Jesko didn't need theatrics. It knew what it was. The flare gun fired. Jason launched like he'd been shot from a cannon, the Supra's all-wheel drive system hooking up instantly, his modified turbos hitting full boost before Elara had even processed that the race had started. He had 2 car lengths before she managed to get the Jesko's power down without spinning the rear tires. The first turn approached faster than expected. Jason was carrying more speed than seemed possible. He braked late, turned in aggressive, the Supra rotating through the apex with the kind of precision that came from knowing exactly what the car would do before it did it. Elara braked where she'd braked in the previous races, turned in at the same point, and immediately knew she'd made a mistake. Too conservative, too careful, too worried about the car. Jason extended his lead to 4 car lengths. The straightaway was next, and this was where horsepower should have mattered. But Jason had done something insane to his Supra. The speedometer climbed past 120, 130, kept climbing. The gap stayed constant, neither car gaining, both drivers maxed out. Then the chicane appeared and Elara made a decision. Instead of braking early like she had against Marcus, like Jason expected her to, she braked impossibly late. So late that the Jesko's ABS pulsed under her foot, the tires right at the edge of lockup. She turned in harder than physics should allow, felt the car's weight transfer, used the carbon fiber body to scrape against the barriers again. The sound was horrific, metal on concrete, pieces breaking off, damage happening in real time. But she carried more speed through the chicane than anyone had all night, cutting the gap to Jason from 4 car lengths to 1. Through his rear window, she could see his head snap to the mirror, surprise visible even at speed. The decreasing radius turn came next. Jason took it smooth and technical, the smart line, the safe line. Elara took it like a missile, braking in the middle of the corner, getting the car rotated, trusting the rear-wheel drive to push her through the exit. They came out side by side. The crowd noise changed pitch, excitement building. This was the race they'd wanted. 2 drivers refusing to yield, both committed past the point of rational decision-making. Jason went defensive on the next section, taking inside lines, making Elara go around. She did, using the Jesko's power to compensate for the longer distance. Paint traded between them twice, neither backing off, both cars picking up scars. Victor was going to have a heart attack, assuming he didn't just shoot her when this was over. The narrow section appeared ahead, factory walls on both sides, barely wider than a car. Jason hit it first, threading the gap with millimeter precision. Elara followed, and this time she didn't scrape the walls. She carved through the space like water, feeling the Jesko respond to inputs before she fully committed to them. This was it. This was the feeling she'd been chasing. Complete integration with the machine, thought and action becoming the same thing, existing purely in the moment with no past or future, just the eternal now of speed and danger and being absolutely, completely alive. They emerged from the narrow section locked together, neither giving ground. 3 turns remained before the finish. Jason changed tactics. Instead of defensive driving, he started taking aggressive lines that forced Elara to choose, back off, or risk contact. It was smart, using the fact that she was in an expensive car against her. But Lauren's words echoed in her head. It's a car. Cars can be fixed. Alara stopped backing off. The first of the final 3 turns, she went inside when Jason expected her to go around. Their mirrors clipped, plastic exploding, both cars wobbling but holding. Jason's surprise was visible. He'd expected her to yield, but she hadn't. Second turn, Jason tried the same move. Alara matched him, refusing to be intimidated. More paint traded, more damage accumulating, the Jesco's pristine carbon fiber picking up scars like battle honors. Final turn before this finished straight, the long sweeping right that fed into the line. This was it, everything coming down to who wanted it more, who was willing to risk more, who could find that extra 1/10 of a second that separated good from great. Jason took the racing line, smooth and fast. Alara took the high line again, using the banking, scraping the concrete barrier with a sound like the world ending. The Jesco's right side tires walked the edge between grip and disaster. She held it. They came off the final turn dead even, the finish line 600 feet ahead. Both engines screaming, both drivers maxed out, both cars giving everything they had. 500 feet, 400, 300. Jason's Supra started pulling ahead, his aerodynamics or gearing or something giving him the edge. Alara watched the gap open, inches, then a foot, then 2 feet. 200 feet to go. She was losing. After everything, stealing the car, confronting Dominic, damaging $4 million worth of carbon fiber, she was going to lose to a 22-year-old in a salvage title Supra, 100 feet. Something in Alara broke. Not in a bad way, more like a dam breaking, releasing water that had been held back too long. Every rule she'd followed for 3 years, every time she'd made herself smaller, every moment she'd swallowed words and anger and herself to keep peace with a man who called her an ornament. She stopped caring about the car, stopped caring about consequences, stopped caring about anything except crossing that line first. The Jesco had one more gear. The transmission was already maxed, but there was one thing she hadn't used all night because Dominic had specifically told her never to use it on the street. Launch control. It was designed for standing starts, not rolling acceleration at 140 miles per hour. Using it now would probably damage the transmission, might blow the engine, definitely void whatever warranty remained. She didn't care. Alara hit the button sequence, felt the car's computer protest, then engage. The transmission dropped a gear, the engine screamed past red line, and every bit of available power hit the rear wheels simultaneously. The Jesco surged forward like it had been launched from a catapult, 50 feet to the finish line. She pulled even with Jason, 40 feet, half a car length ahead. 30 feet. Jason tried to draft, but physics didn't care about trying. 20 feet, full car length ahead. 10 feet, 2 car lengths. Alara crossed the finish line first, the victory undeniable, and immediately knew she'd made a terrible mistake with the launch control because the engine note changed from scream to something that sounded expensive and broken. She hit the brakes, slowing fast, pulled off to the side before the Jesco's engine could commit suicide completely. Jason coasted past, slowing more gradually, his Supra intact if scarred. Alara killed the ignition and sat there, hands shaking from adrenaline, ears ringing from engine noise, the smell of burning oil and clutch material filling the cabin. She'd won. But the car? The crowd noise hit like a wave, cheering and screaming and general chaos. Doors opening, people shouting her name, phones recording everything. Jason appeared at her window, knocking on the glass. She opened it. "That was insane," he said, breathing hard, grinning like a maniac. "The launch control at 140? That was the stupidest, most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Is the engine dead?" "Probably." "I don't know. I drive a Supra, not a spaceship." He extended his hand through the window. "Hell of a race. You're as good as the story said." Alara shook his hand, noting the same calluses she had, the same oil under the fingernails. "You're better than I expected." "Thanks. Still lost, though." He laughed. "Worth it to see that move. Nobody's going to believe me when I tell them." He walked away, swallowed by the crowd. Lauren appeared next, pushing through the chaos with the determination of someone who'd done this before. "Can you drive it?" Lauren asked, all business. "I don't know. Engine sounds wrong." "Then we tow it. I've got chains in my truck." She glanced toward where Victor stood, his expression unreadable. "But we need to move fast before your husband's security decides to impound the thing." Together, they managed to get the Jesco in neutral and started pushing it toward Lauren's truck. Several people from the crowd helped without being asked, everyone wanting to be part of the legend in the making. Victor appeared, blocking their path. Mrs. Rourke, he said, voice carrying that Eastern European accent Dominic's organization seemed to prefer. I believe Mr. Rourke will want that vehicle returned to the estate immediately. I'm sure he will, Ilara replied. But the engine's damaged. It needs to be towed to a shop. Then I will arrange for appropriate transport. I've already got transport. Victor's expression didn't change, but something in his posture suggested this was going to become a problem. Mr. Rourke was very specific. The vehicle returns to the estate. Tonight. And I'm being very specific. The vehicle goes to a shop. Tonight. Ilara met his eyes directly. You can follow us if you want, make sure we don't steal it further or whatever, but I'm not letting it get impounded by Dominic's mechanics who don't know the first thing about Koenigsegg's. It was a bluff. Dominic's mechanics were probably excellent, but Victor didn't know that she knew that. I will need to make a call, Victor said finally. Make it, but make it fast. Engine's still hot and I want to get it somewhere safe. Victor stepped away, phone already out. Lauren gave Ilara a look that clearly said, What are you doing? But kept quiet. You can't keep playing chicken with these people, Lauren muttered. Eventually they're going to call your bluff. Then I'll deal with it then. Victor returned 3 minutes later. Mr. Rourke has agreed to allow the vehicle to be transported to a certified shop. I will follow to ensure this happens as stated. Fine. It took another 20 minutes to get the Jesco properly chained to Lauren's truck, weight distributed correctly, emergency lights functioning. By the time they were ready to move, most of the crowd had dispersed, heading to wherever people went after illegal street races ended. Dante found Ilara before she climbed into Lauren's passenger seat. You did it! 3 races, 3 wins. Nix is officially back. Yeah, you don't sound happy about it. I just destroyed a $4 million car to beat a kid in a Supra. I'm not sure happiness is the right emotion. Maybe not, but you proved what you needed to prove. He handed her a thick envelope. Your winnings. 50 grand, split between the top 3 finishers. You got 30, Kira got 12, Marcus got 8. Ilara took the envelope, surprised by the weight. I wasn't racing for money. I know, but that's how the circuit works. You win, you get paid. Dante smiled. Welcome back, Nix. Try not to disappear for another 3 years, yeah? The drive to Lauren's preferred mechanic shop took 40 minutes through empty streets, Victor following in a black SUV the entire way. Lauren drove in silence, letting Ilara process everything that had happened. $30,000 sat in the envelope on Ilara's lap. More money than she'd seen in physical form since before she'd married Dominic. Money she'd earned herself, with her own skill, not because of who she'd married. It felt significant in a way she couldn't fully articulate. The shop was called Precision Imports, a nondescript building in an industrial area that probably looked sketchy during the day and definitely looked sketchy at 2 a.m. But Lauren drove around back like she owned the place, punched in a code, and a bay door rolled up. Inside, the shop was immaculate. Lifts, diagnostic equipment, tool chests organized with the kind of obsessive precision that spoke to serious work. A man emerged from an office, mid-50s, graying hair, wearing coveralls that had seen better decades. Lauren, he said, voice rough from years of smoking, you only call at 2 a.m. when there's a problem. Ray, meet Ilara. Ilara, this is Ray Chen, best mechanic in the city, and I'm including myself in that comparison. Ray looked at the Jesco being towed behind Lauren's truck and whistled low. That's a Koenigsegg Jesco. Correct. It's damaged. Very correct. Do you know what shop rates are on a Koenigsegg? I'd need to order parts from Sweden, get certified, probably sacrifice a small animal to the Swedish automotive gods. I'll pay whatever it costs, Ilara said. But it stays here. You do the work, and nobody else touches it without my permission. Ray looked at Victor, who'd parked and was now standing near the bay door, like a very expensive, very dangerous scarecrow. Who's the muscle? My husband's babysitter, Ilara replied. Ignore him. Hard to ignore someone who looks like they bench press motorcycles. But Ray walked over to the Jesco, started examining the damage with a flashlight. Carbon fibers scraped to hell, splitters cracked, mirrors are gone. And based on that smell, you cooked the clutch and possibly the transmission. He stood up, shaking his head. What did you do? Race it? 3 times. Congratulations, you just turned a $4 million hypercar into a $3 million insurance claim. He pulled out a tablet, started making notes. I'll need to get it on the lift, do a full diagnostic, probably call Sweden in the morning to see what parts are even available. You're looking at 6 weeks minimum, maybe 3 months, and cost somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000, depending on what I find. The number should have been terrifying. Instead, Ilara felt oddly calm. Do it. I'll figure out the money. You got 30 grand from tonight, Lauren pointed out. That's a start. That's 10% of the low estimate. Not much of a start. Ray shrugged. I can work with you on payment plans, but I'm going to need a deposit, say 20 grand, and we'll figure the rest as we go. Ilara counted out 20,000 from the envelope, watching her winnings disappear into repair costs. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd won the races, proved she was still Nick's, and immediately spent her prize money fixing the damage she'd caused in the process. I'll have an estimate by Monday, Ray said, pocketing the cash. Until then, the car stays locked in my shop, and your babysitter can sleep in the SUV if he's that worried about it. Victor spoke for the first time since they'd arrived. Mr. Rourke will want daily updates on the vehicle's status. Mr. Rourke can call me himself, Ray replied. I don't do third-party communication on jobs this expensive. The two men stared at each other, tension building, until Victor finally nodded. I will inform him of your terms. Lauren drove Ilara to her apartment, a converted warehouse loft in the arts district that smelled like oil paint and possibility. The spare room was actually a sectioned-off area with a futon and some storage boxes, but it had a door and privacy, which was more than Ilara had expected. Make yourself at home, Lauren said, tossing her keys on a counter cluttered with engine parts and takeout containers. Bathrooms through there, kitchens wherever you can find counter space, and house rules are simple. Don't touch my tools, don't bring drama to my doorstep, and don't eat the leftover Thai food because it's probably older than it should be. Thank you for everything. Yeah, well, you'd do the same for me. Lauren paused at her bedroom door. For what it's worth. What you did tonight took guts. Stupid guts, but guts. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you can figure out what happens next. Ilara collapsed on the futon, still wearing Lauren's borrowed clothes, smelling like burnt clutch and poor decisions. Her phone sat powered off in her pocket, probably full of messages she didn't want to read. She'd won the races. Proved she was still Nick's. Confronted Dominic in front of 300 people. Damaged a $4 million car beyond quick repair. Spent her winnings on deposits for repairs that would take months. And somehow, despite everything, she felt more herself than she had in 3 years. Sleep came hard. Her mind replaying the races, the confrontation, Victor's implied threats. But eventually exhaustion won, and she drifted off to the sound of distant traffic and Lauren moving around in the next room. She woke 6 hours later to sunlight through industrial windows and the smell of coffee. Lauren was already up, working on something at a drafting table covered in blueprints and parts catalogs. Coffee's fresh, Lauren said without looking up. Well, freshish. I made it an hour ago. Ilara poured herself a cup, tasted it, and decided it was better than the garage coffee, but not by much. What are you working on? Client wants a custom supercharger set up for a classic Mustang. I'm trying to figure out how to make it fit without cutting up the firewall. She finally looked up. You sleep okay? Better than I expected. Good. Because your phone's been buzzing nonstop for the last hour, and I'm pretty sure your husband knows you're here. Ilara's stomach dropped. You didn't tell him. I didn't tell him anything, but Victor followed us here last night, remember? He probably reported the address. Lauren went back to her blueprints. You can't hide forever, Ilara. Eventually you're going to have to face this. I know. So what's the plan? Keep crashing here, hope Dominic gives up and files for divorce? Take your remaining 10 grand and disappear to Mexico? Go back and pretend last night never happened? Ilara sipped the terrible coffee, thinking. What was the plan? She'd been so focused on escaping, on proving herself, on remembering who she was, that she hadn't thought past the immediate moment. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, powered it on, and watched the notifications pile up. 17 new messages from Dominic, 8 from unknown numbers, 3 missed calls from Alexei Volkov, and 1 text from Kira. Nice driving last night. We should talk. That one was unexpected. Ilara opened it, found an address and a time. Noon today. Come alone. I've got a meeting, she said. With who? Kira Volkov. Lauren's head snapped up. The same Kira whose uncle threatened you yesterday? That Kira? Yeah. And you're actually going. She said we should talk. I'm curious what about. Curiosity killed the street racer, Lauren muttered. But fine, if you're dead by tonight, I'm keeping your 10 grand to cover rent. Alara showered, borrowed more of Lauren's clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt that almost fit, and tried to make herself look less like someone who'd spent the night on a futon after racing stolen hypercars. The address Kira had sent was a coffee shop in the financial district, the kind of place where suits paid $8 for espresso and pretended to enjoy it. Completely wrong for a meeting between street racers, which probably meant Kira was making a point. Alara arrived 10 minutes early and found Kira already there, sitting at a corner table, 2 espressos waiting. You came, Kira said. I wasn't sure you would. You asked to talk. I'm talking. Sit. Alara sat, eyeing the espresso suspiciously. If you're going to poison me, you should know I've already arranged for evidence to go public if I disappear. Kira laughed, genuine and surprised. I like you. You've got nerve. She pushed 1 espresso across the table. It's not poisoned. I want to make you an offer, not kill you. What kind of offer? The kind that solves both our problems. Kira leaned back, studying Alara with those sharp eyes. You're married to Dominic Rourke, which makes you connected to power structures in this city most people don't even know exist. But you're also clearly done with that life, or you wouldn't have stolen his car and disappeared. I'm listening. My uncle Alexei has been trying to expand his operations into territories Dominic controls. There's been tension, negotiations, the usual business drama. Kira paused. But here's what nobody knows. I don't want to work for my uncle. I want out of the family business entirely. Problem is, leaving isn't exactly optional in our world. What does this have to do with me? You know things. About Dominic's operations, his associates, his weaknesses. Information that could be valuable to the right people. Kira's expression went serious. I'm not asking you to betray your husband. I'm asking if you'd be willing to trade information for protection. Help me get leverage over my uncle, and I'll make sure he backs off on whatever threats he's made against you. Alara processed this, looking for the trap. And what would you do with this leverage? Use it to negotiate my exit. Tell Alexei that if he doesn't let me walk away clean, certain information about his dealings with Dominic goes to the FBI. She smiled without humor. Mutually assured destruction, classic strategy. You'd burn your own uncle? He'd burn me without hesitation if I became a liability. I'm just applying the same logic. Kira sipped her espresso. Look, I know this is a lot to process. You don't have to decide now. But think about it. You want out of Dominic's world, I want out of Alexei's world. Maybe we can help each other. And if I say no? Then we part as friendly competitors, and you deal with whatever consequences come from stealing a $4 million car. Kira stood, leaving money for the espressos. My number's in your phone from last night. Call me if you change your mind. She left before Alara could respond, disappearing into the lunchtime crowd like she'd never been there. Alara sat alone with 2 espressos and a decision she wasn't ready to make. Alara left the coffee shop and walked for 3 hours straight, needing the movement to process what Kira had offered. The city looked different in daylight, less forgiving, more honest about its decay. She passed homeless encampments under overpasses, boarded up storefronts next to luxury condos, the kind of contrast that made you wonder if anyone was actually winning at this game called life. Kira's offer kept circling in her head like a vulture waiting for something to die. Trade information about Dominic for protection from Alexei. Betray one criminal to escape another. Simple, clean, mutually beneficial. Also completely wrong. Whatever Dominic had become, whatever he'd done, he was still the man she'd married. And marriage, even a failing one, meant something. It meant you didn't sell out your spouse to their enemies, even when they'd called you a lifeless ornament, even when they'd made you small, even when leaving them seemed like the only path to survival. Her phone rang, Dominic's name on the screen. She answered. Where are you? His voice was controlled, but she could hear the edge underneath. 3 days of her being gone, and the control was starting to crack. Walking, thinking. About what? About whether I want to come home. Silence on his end, long enough that she checked to see if the call had dropped. Then, is that actually a question, Or have you already decided?
I don't know yet. Victor says the car needs months of work, $500,000 in repairs.
Probably more. I used launch control at speed. Ray thinks I might have damaged the transmission. Another silence. Then, surprisingly, Dominic laughed, sharp and humorless, but genuine. You used launch control at 140 miles per hour. In my Jesco, during an illegal street race. Yes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I won, though.
Of course you won. You always won. That's what I could never understand about you. His voice changed, losing some of the edge. When we met, you were this force of nature who didn't care what anyone thought. You drove like physics were optional, turned down sponsorships because they tried to control you, built engines with your bare hands. And I wanted that, wanted you. But I didn't know how to be with someone that alive without trying to contain it.
Alara stopped walking, standing on a corner in the financial district where men in suits rushed past like their lives depended on making the next meeting. You made me into something I wasn't. I know, and you let me, which I still don't understand. The woman I married would have told me to go to hell the first time I suggested you skip a race to attend one of my events. The woman you married was tired of fighting, tired of proving herself to people who'd already decided she wasn't enough. You made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I was. Except that was a lie, wasn't it? You wanted me contained too, just with better jewelry.
Maybe. Probably. Dominic sighed, and she heard exhaustion in it. I got a call from Alexei this morning. He knows about the races, about you being Nick's. He's making implications about whether my wife being a street racer creates liabilities for our business arrangements.
What did you tell him? That my wife is none of his concern. That whatever you choose to do is between us, not him. A pause. He didn't like that answer, suggested that perhaps you needed better supervision. I told him if he touched you, I'd burn his organization to the ground and dance in the ashes. The casual violence in his tone should have been horrifying. Instead, Alara felt something complicated and unwelcome. Gratitude mixed with anger, mixed with the recognition that Dominic did care, in his broken, proprietary way. Kira made me an offer, she said. Information about you in exchange for protection from Alexei. Are you going to take it? No. Why not? It would solve your problem. Get Alexei off your back, give you leverage. Because betraying you doesn't solve anything. It just makes me someone else I don't want to be. Alara started walking again, needing movement. I'm done being people I'm not. Done making myself smaller. But I'm also done with simple solutions that require selling pieces of myself to get free. So what do you want? It was the question she'd been avoiding for 3 days. What did she want? Not who did she want to be. She'd figured that out on the track, remembered it in the garage, proved it to 300 people and herself. But what did she actually want from the wreckage of her marriage and the life she'd tried to build? I want a partnership, she said finally. Not an ornament position, not a decoration. A real partnership where my opinion matters, where I have actual input into decisions that affect both of us, where I get to be myself without being treated like a liability. And if I can't give you that, then we end this, properly. Divorce, property division, the whole thing. No threats, no leverage, no making each other miserable for years while pretending we're still married. Dominic was quiet for a long time. Traffic noise filtered through the phone, suggesting he was outside somewhere. Come home. Not to the estate, to the penthouse downtown. The one I bought before we got married. Just you and me, no security, no Victor watching everything. We'll talk. When? Tonight. 7 p.m. I'll have dinner brought in. He paused. And Alara? Bring your 10,000. You're going to need it. For what? You'll see. He hung up before she could ask more questions. Alara stood on the corner, phone in hand, trying to decide if this was a trap or an olive branch or something else entirely. Dominic had never been predictable, but this felt different. Less controlling, more uncertain, like he was actually willing to negotiate instead of dictating terms. She called Lauren. You're alive, Lauren answered. I was starting to think Kira had harvested your organs. Not yet, but I need advice. Shoot. Dominic wants to meet tonight. Just the two of us. No security. Says we need to talk. And you're actually considering going? After everything? Yes, Lauren sighed. Okay, but ground rules. You meet in a public place first. Make sure he's actually alone. You keep your phone on with location sharing active, and you text me every hour so I know you're still breathing. That seems excessive. Your husband runs a criminal empire and you stole his favorite car. Excessive is the minimum safety standard. Lauren's tone softened slightly. Look, I know you think there's something salvageable with Dominic. Maybe there is, but don't forget what you learned this week. You're stronger alone than you were with him. Whatever you decide, make sure it's because you want it, not because you're scared of the alternative. The advice landed harder than intended. Was she considering reconciliation because she wanted to save her marriage? Or because being Dominic's wife was easier than figuring out who Alara Vance was without the title? She spent the afternoon at Lauren's apartment, trying to prepare for a conversation she couldn't predict. At 6:30, she borrowed Lauren's pickup truck and drove to the penthouse Dominic had mentioned. It sat in the financial district, 40th floor of a building that charged more for parking than most people paid in rent. Dominic was waiting in the lobby, alone as promised, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked younger somehow, less dangerous, more like the man she'd met in that garage 4 years ago. "You came," he said. "You asked." They rode the elevator in silence, 40 floors of tension and unspoken words. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a kitchen that cost more than some houses. Dominic had bought it as an investment property, then never sold it, keeping it as a retreat from the estate's constant business. Dinner sat waiting on the dining table. Thai food from the place near the old garage, the same order she used to get when they first started dating. "You remembered," she said. "I remember everything about you. That was never the problem." Dominic pulled out a chair for her, an old-fashioned gesture that felt strange after years of him barely acknowledging her presence at formal dinners. "The problem was, I didn't know what to do with those memories, how to reconcile the woman I fell in love with and the woman I needed you to be." They ate in silence for a few minutes, the food tasting like nostalgia and missed opportunities. "I talked to Victor," Dominic said finally. "He gave me a full report on the races. Said you drove like someone possessed, that the other drivers were terrified and impressed simultaneously." "I drove like myself." "I know. I saw the videos. Someone posted them online. They're everywhere. Mysterious wife steals husband's hypercar, becomes street racing legend. You're trending on 4 platforms." Alara hadn't checked social media, too focused on survival to care about internet fame. "Great. That's not going to complicate things at all." "Actually, it might help." Dominic pulled out his tablet, showed her an email. "I got this morning from Koenigsegg. They saw the videos, did some research, figured out the car was mine. They want to sponsor you." "Sponsor me for what?" "For racing. Professional racing, not underground circuits. They're launching a new one-make series next year. All Jesco attacks, identical specs, pure driver skill. They want you as one of their featured drivers." He scrolled through the email. "They're offering a full season, salary, car provided, all expenses covered. And they're willing to overlook the fact that you damaged one of their flagship vehicles because the publicity from your races has driven interest through the roof." Alara stared at the email, reading words that didn't make sense. Professional racing, sponsorship, everything she'd turned down 3 years ago because it came with strings attached. "What's the catch?" "No catch." "Well, one catch. They want you to use your actual name. Alara Vance Rourke. They want the story, street racer turned socialite turned professional driver. It's good marketing. I'm not keeping your name if we get divorced." "Then I guess we'd better not get divorced." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "Is that what you want?" Alara asked. "To stay married?" Dominic set down his fork, met her eyes directly. "I want to try. Actually try. Not the version we've been doing where you play the perfect wife, and I pretend that's what I wanted. I want the woman who stole my car and won 3 races in one night. The woman who told me off in front of 300 people. The woman who used to rebuild engines at 2 a.m. because she couldn't sleep until she figured out the problem. That woman doesn't fit in your world. Then maybe my world needs to change." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, slid it across the table. "I talked to my attorney this morning, drew up papers restructuring how my businesses operate. You're listed as equal partner in everything, equal say, equal authority, equal legal liability. If you're going to be married to someone who runs a criminal empire, you might as well run it with me instead of being decoration." Alara opened the envelope, scanned the legal documents inside. Partnership agreements, ownership transfers, decision-making protocols. Everything he'd said, formalized in language that would hold up in court. Why? She asked. Because you were right. I did make you small. I took someone extraordinary and tried to fit her into a box labeled appropriate wife. And I lost you in the process. Lost the woman I actually married, not the one I tried to create. Dominic reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close. I can't promise I won't screw this up again. I'm controlling and paranoid and terrible at sharing power, but I can promise I'll try, if you're willing to give me the chance. It was the most honest he'd been in 3 years. Maybe ever. No charm, no manipulation, just broken acknowledgement of broken behavior. Alara thought about Kira's offer, about the easy path that required betrayal, thought about the garage where she'd slept in a hypercar's passenger seat, about Lauren's spare room and borrowed clothes, thought about the choice between easy and right, between what solved problems and what she could live with. I need conditions, she said. Name them. I take the Koenigsegg sponsorship. I race professionally, travel for the season, do the full circuit. You don't get to veto this because it's inconvenient for your schedule or image. Agreed. I run the logistics side of your operations. Actually run it, not pretend to while you make the real decisions. If I say a shipment route is compromised, we change it. If I say a deal is bad, we walk away. Agreed. And you go to therapy, real therapy, with someone who specializes in control issues and criminal psychology. Because I can't do this alone. You need to actually work on yourself, not just promise to be better. Dominic flinched at that one, but nodded. Agreed. Anything else? Yeah. You tell Alexei Volkov that his niece wants out of the family business, and you help make that happen. Create whatever cover story you need, but you get her free and clear. Why would I do that? Because she asked me to betray you, and I didn't. Because she's 26 years old and deserves a chance to be something other than her uncle's asset. And because if you're serious about being better, this is where it starts, using your power to help people instead of containing them. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, processing. That's going to cost me. Politically, financially, possibly in terms of my relationship with the Volkov organization. I know. And you're making it a condition anyway. Yes. He smiled, and it reached his eyes for the first time in months. Okay, I'll make it happen. Anything else? One more thing. You give me the Jesco when it's repaired. Full ownership, my name on the title, no strings attached. I destroyed it winning races. I should get to keep it. That car is worth $4 million. And you're worth $700 million. You can afford it. Dominic laughed, genuine and surprised. You've been checking my net worth? I've been planning my exit strategy. Due diligence. Fair enough? He extended his hand across the table. Deal. You get the Jesco, the sponsorship, equal partnership, and I go to therapy. In exchange, we actually try to make this marriage work. Alara looked at his extended hand, thinking about everything it represented. Partnership instead of property. Respect instead of control. Two broken people trying to build something functional from wreckage. She shook his hand. Deal. They finished dinner talking about logistics, how the partnership would actually work, what therapy he'd pursue, how they'd handle the social fallout from Alara racing professionally. It felt strange, almost businesslike, negotiating the terms of their marriage like a contract. But maybe that was better, clearer. Less room for misunderstanding when expectations were explicit. Around 10 p.m., Dominic's phone rang. He checked the caller ID, frowned, answered. Victor, what is it? Alara could hear Victor's voice through the speaker, urgent and clipped. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Trouble. Dominic's expression went cold and focused. The businessman replacing the husband in seconds. When? How many? Okay, lock down the estate, move the sensitive materials to secure storage, and get Marcus to handle the legal side. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already moving toward the door. We have a problem. FBI raid on one of our warehouses. They're claiming anonymous tip about weapons trafficking. Let me come with you. Alara, this isn't... You just made me equal partner. That means I get to be there when things go sideways, not just when they're convenient. She grabbed her jacket. Besides, I'm good in crisis situations. Racing teaches you to think fast. Dominic studied her for a second, then nodded. Okay, but you stay in the car until I know it's safe, and if I tell you to leave, you leave. Understood? Understood. They drove to the warehouse in Dominic's Aston Martin, Victor meeting them there with two other security guys. The FBI presence was obvious: 3 black SUVs, a dozen agents in tactical gear, someone with a battering ram preparing to breach the main entrance. They haven't entered yet, Victor reported, waiting on some kind of clearance, but they've got the building surrounded. Dominic's jaw tightened. Who's the agent in charge? Woman named Sarah Chen. Used to work organized crime in New York, transferred here 6 months ago. Word is she's ambitious and doesn't care whose toes she steps on. Great, a crusader. Dominic pulled out his phone, started dialing. I'll call our attorney, see what... Wait. Alara was staring at the warehouse, something bothering her. That's the facility on River Street, right? The one you use for automotive parts storage? Yes. Why? Because I reviewed the inventory last week, when you asked me to start familiarizing myself with operations. Remember? She pulled out her own phone, scrolling through photos. There's nothing illegal in there, just legitimate automotive parts for the luxury car export business. Unless you're hiding something you didn't tell me about. No, it's exactly what you said. Parts storage. Completely legal. Then why would someone tip the FBI about weapons trafficking? There are no weapons there. Alara's mind raced, puzzle pieces clicking together. Unless the tip was fake, unless someone wanted the FBI to raid that warehouse specifically. Dominic's expression shifted from worried to calculating. Keep talking. What's in the warehouse next door? The one you almost leased last year but decided against. Alexei Volkov's operation. Import-export, supposedly legitimate, but we both know it's a front for... He stopped, understanding dawning. For weapons trafficking. The very thing the FBI just got an anonymous tip about. So if the FBI raids the wrong warehouse first, you look guilty and incompetent. But if they raid the right warehouse, Alara let the implication hang. Then Alexei's operation gets exposed. I look cooperative, and the FBI owes me a favor. Dominic smiled, cold and sharp. Victor, get me Agent Chen. Tell her I have information about weapons trafficking in the area, and I'm willing to cooperate fully. What followed was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Dominic talked to Agent Chen, explaining that they'd had their own suspicions about the neighboring warehouse, providing documentation of suspicious activity they'd noticed. Alara backed him up with logistics expertise, pointing out discrepancies in shipping schedules that suggested illegal activity. Within an hour, the FBI had shifted their raid from Dominic's warehouse to Alexei's. Within 2 hours, they'd found exactly what Alara had predicted: crates of illegal weapons, trafficking documentation, enough evidence to take down a significant portion of Volkov's operation. Agent Chen approached Dominic as her team loaded evidence into trucks. Mr. Rourke, your cooperation has been noted. We'll need formal statements, but you and your wife are free to go. Thank you, Agent Chen. Always happy to help law enforcement. She gave him a look that suggested she knew exactly what kind of help he usually provided law enforcement, but nodded. We'll be in touch. Driving back to the penthouse, Dominic was quiet. Finally, he said, That was impressive. How did you figure it out so fast? Logistics. You learn to think in systems. Who benefits, who loses, what makes sense, and what doesn't. Someone wanted the FBI looking at your operation, which meant they were hiding their own. Alara shrugged. Plus, I've spent 3 years watching you and your associates play power games. You pick up patterns. You just helped take down Alexei Volkov's weapons operation. We helped. Partnership, remember? Dominic laughed, surprised and genuine. Yeah, partnership. He reached over, took her hand. Thank you for everything tonight. For choosing to come back, for helping with the raid, for being the person I forgot you were. I didn't come back for you, Alara said. I came back for me. Because this version, where I get to be myself, use my skills, actually matter. This version I can live with. Fair enough. They spent the night at the penthouse, talking until 2 a.m. about how the partnership would actually work. Dominic promised to handle Kira's extraction from her uncle's organization, using the FBI raid as leverage. Alara promised to review all major operations logistics, finding inefficiencies and vulnerabilities they'd been missing. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even entirely comfortable. But it was honest, which was more than they'd had in 3 years. 3 months later, Elara stood in the Koenigsegg garage at Silverstone Circuit, preparing for the first race of the professional season. The Jesko attack gleamed under fluorescent lights, painted in colors that matched her original racing livery, black and deep purple, with NYX emblazoned across the side in silver letters. Ray had finished repairing the original Jesko 2 weeks earlier. The final bill hit $400,000, which Dominic had paid without comment. The car now sat in Elara's name, legally hers, parked in a climate-controlled garage at the estate. She still drove it sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, remembering what it felt like to steal it and disappear into darkness. Lauren appeared in the garage wearing a crew chief headset and looking official. Dominic had hired her to run Elara's racing operation, paying her triple what she made at her independent shop. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because your husband's here and he brought half the organization with him." Elara looked toward the paddock, where Dominic stood with Victor, Marcus, and several others from his operation. They'd flown in on a private jet, turned her race into a company outing. He caught her eye and smiled. No longer the controlling husband who'd wanted her small and quiet. Now something closer to an actual partner, still learning how to share power but trying. The therapy was helping. Slowly, imperfectly, but helping. Kira appeared beside Lauren, holding a timing sheet and looking focused. Dominic had made good on his promise, creating an elaborate cover story about Kira joining a legitimate racing program to expand Volkov family interests. Alexei, dealing with FBI investigations and organizational chaos, had been forced to accept it. She now worked as Elara's data analyst, using her mathematics degree and racing knowledge to optimize performance. "Your first sector time needs work," Kira said without preamble. "You're losing 2/10 in the final corner. I've got suggestions." "Let's hear them." They spent 20 minutes discussing racing lines and breakpoints, Lauren adding technical input, the three of them forming an unlikely but effective team, former street racers and criminals, now running a professional racing operation with manufacturer backing. The world was strange that way. Give it enough time, and yesterday's impossible became today's normal. Race time approached. Elara suited up, pulled on her helmet, climbed into the Jesko attack. The familiar feeling washed over her. Complete focus, absolute presence, everything else falling away except the track and the car and the challenge ahead. She'd learned something important over the past 3 months. About herself, about marriage, about the difference between being contained and being supported. Dominic could give her space to be herself, or he could try to control her, but he couldn't do both. And she could be married, or she could be small, but she couldn't do both either. So they'd chosen, imperfectly, messily, with setbacks and arguments and moments where old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But they were trying, which was more than nothing. The race start came together fast, 23 cars, all identical, pure driver skill determining the outcome. Elara qualified 7th, respectable for a rookie, but not what she wanted. She planned to change that. The formation lap felt like forever, cars weaving to warm tires, engines building heat. Then they were on the grid, lights counting down. Every muscle tensed for the launch. Green flag. She drove like herself. Not conservatively, not recklessly, but with the kind of calculated aggression that came from knowing exactly what she was capable of. By lap 5, she'd moved to 4th. By lap 10, 2nd. By lap 15, she was pressuring the leader. The final lap came down to one corner. The leader defended perfectly, taking the inside line, protecting position. Elara went around the outside, using a line nobody had tried all race, trusting her read of the track and the car's capabilities. They crossed the finish line side by side, so close the photo finish camera had trouble calling it. Elara, first place, by 7/1000ths of a second. She pulled into victory lane, killed the engine, sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. First professional race, first professional win. Everything she'd walked away from 3 years ago, now handed back with better terms. Dominic was waiting when she climbed out, along with Lauren and Kira and the rest of the team. He didn't try to kiss her or make it about him. Just smiled and said, "Hell of a race. Thanks. You used the outside line on the final corner. That was insane."
Yeah, well, insane seems to work for me. Later, after the podium ceremony and the interviews and the celebration, she found a quiet moment in the garage. Lauren was packing equipment, Kira was reviewing data for the next race, Dominic was handling business calls.
Everyone doing what they did best, supporting each other without trying to contain each other. It wasn't perfect. Dominic still had moments where he defaulted to control, where he forgot that partnership meant actually sharing decisions. Alara still had moments where she wanted to run, where the weight of his criminal enterprise felt like too much to carry. But they were learning, slowly, imperfectly, with backslides and arguments and couples therapy sessions that got heated. And Alara was racing again. Professionally, legitimately, under her own name with a manufacturer backing and a team that respected her skills. No longer Nix, the mysterious street racer, but Alara Vance Rourke, professional driver who'd stolen her husband's hypercar and turned it into a second chance. The story would become legend eventually. The wife who disappeared into the night, won 3 races in a stolen car, confronted her husband in front of hundreds, and somehow made it all work out. People would tell it wrong, add details that didn't happen, turn it into something cleaner than reality. But Alara would know the truth, that she'd been dying slowly in a life that didn't fit, that she'd broken free the only way she knew how, that she'd found herself again on asphalt and adrenaline and the pure, honest terror of driving faster than rational thought allowed. And she'd learned that you could be married without being owned. That partnership meant both people standing upright, not one person making themselves small so the other could feel tall. That love, if it was actually love, required room to breathe. She'd also learned that sometimes the way back to yourself required stealing a $4 million hypercar and racing it until something broke. And if that something was your marriage and you chose to rebuild it anyway, then at least you rebuilt it on honest terms. 3 years from now, she'd win the championship. 5 years from now, she'd retire from professional racing and take over running Dominic's entire operation, legitimizing it piece by piece until they were barely criminal at all. 7 years from now, she'd open her own racing school, teaching young drivers that skill mattered more than money, that you could compete without selling yourself. But tonight, standing in the garage after her first professional win, she was just Alara. Not an ornament, not decoration, not someone's property, just herself. Finally, completely, unapologetically herself. And that was enough.